3 years ago, my own sister sent me to a juvenile detention center. Young Master Jia claimed that I had cost the company 100 million. My oldest sister threw me in there without a second thought, so I would learn some discipline. My own parents just stood by and watched, coldly as if I were their worst enemy. Now, 3 years later, I've learned my lesson and I'm back, but they're full of regrets. After 3 years here, I am again standing in front of the grand gates of the Zhu family villa. To be completely honest, I really never thought I'd set foot here again. That night, 3 years ago, this was the exact spot I was dragged from by force. I remember it perfectly. It was pouring rain, the ground was covered in mud. 2 security guards were dragging me toward the exit. I was gripping the doorframe with all my might, until my fingernails tore off, leaving blood on the wood. I bet you can still see the stains. Today, I turned around screaming toward the house. I was calling out for Dad, Mom, and my 3 sisters. I screamed that I hadn't touched that 100 million, that I hadn't framed Zhao Mini. I begged them to believe me just this once, but nobody did. He just stood there on the steps, staring at me like you'd look at a rabid dog, like you'd look at a freak of nature. My father didn't even deign to spare me a glance. He straight up turned his back on me. As for my mother, she was crying with her hand over her mouth, but she was crying, wondering how she could have given birth to such a monster. My oldest sister, Zhao Jinju, with a face of ice, was ordering security to hurry up so we wouldn't put on a show for the neighbors. My second sister adjusted her glasses, saying, "Lock him up and re-educate him once and for all." My third sister, Zhu Yiwei, actually tried to say something, but a dark glare from the eldest shut her right up. As for Zhu Mini, he was standing behind everyone else, head lowered, shoulders trembling. He looked like he was scared to death, but I was the only one who saw his expression when he lifted his head. That mocking glint, that smile, I will never forget it. 3 years, 1,095 days later, here I am again. Today the weather is nice. The sun is beating down hard, it's even burning my eyes. I'm standing here right in front of the Zhu family gate, holding an old faded canvas bag in my hand. Just this bag, it contains everything I accumulated during those 3 years of being locked up. I look down at my clothes. My gray shirt is completely faded from being washed so many times, but it's buttoned up with obsessive care, right up to the very top. The doctor told me that a strict appearance is the first step toward maintaining order. He also said that people like me are in desperate need of order, and I am someone who respects order. The gate opens. The first one to rush out is Yu Ming. He hasn't changed at all. Fair complexion, still looking just as clean cut. He's wearing light gray loungewear, his fine hair falling softly over his forehead. He still has that innocent angel look, looking like a little white rabbit incapable of hurting a fly. The moment he sees me, his expression changes at lightning speed. First frozen in surprise, then his eyes well up with tears a second later. His lips stretch to force a smile that's both amazed and overwhelmed. He runs toward me with long strides. "Big brother, you're finally back." He grabs my arm, his voice trembling with sobs. "Big brother, you must have suffered so much there, right? Dad, Mom, and I thought about you every single day. We were waiting for your return every single day." It doesn't affect me at all. I simply look down to watch his hand gripping my arm. Those same hands 3 years ago, however, he was the one who handed over a fake evidence to my father with his own 2 hands. "Big brother, why aren't you saying anything?" Zhu Mini blinked his eyes, trying to see if I was still angry with them. "Big brother, I didn't have a choice back then. All the evidence pointed toward you." He wasn't able to finish his sentence before my mother came running from behind. My mother was wearing a dark red vest. Her hair had turned a lot grayer than 3 years ago, and the wrinkles on her face had also deepened. The exact moment she saw me, her eyes instantly welled up with tears. She stumbled down the steps, with her arms wide open, ready to hold me close. "Ting Ting, my Ting Ting." She threw herself on me to embrace me, a hug with unbelievable force. Her entire body was shaking. "You suffered so much," she cried. "It's all Mom's fault. Mom is so sorry I just stood there without batting an eye. Her tears were flowing down my neck, warm tears with a slightly salty taste. She still gave off that same familiar scent. Before, this smell used to comfort me. I used to tell myself it was the smell of home. But right now, I only had one single thought in mind. What do these emotions have to do with me? The doctor told me that emotions were nothing but noise, and I don't need to listen to that noise. I took a step backward, a very slight but firm movement, just enough to break away from her embrace. Her hand stayed frozen in midair, her expression of utter shock. How should I put it? It was actually kind of funny. She stood there completely shocked. "Ting Ting, what's wrong with you?" "Mom, big brother just got back. He hasn't found his bearings yet." Zhu Ming hurriedly cut in to ease the tension. He reached out a hand to support me. "Mom, don't be sad. I'm sure big brother is still thinking of us." My third sister, Zhao Yiwei, also came running out of the house. She was wearing a long off-white dress. Her hair let down and her eyes were red as well. "Ting Ting." She ran toward me to grab my hand, but I dodged her by stepping to the side. Her hand was left hanging in the air. She let out a small awkward laugh. Ting Ting, how did you lose so much weight? Weren't you eating enough over there? Don't worry, I'm going to tell the kitchen to whip up some of your favorite dishes. I looked at their faces. To be completely honest, I could see their tears and their grief perfectly fine, but I felt absolutely nothing. It was just empty where my heart used to be. There was nothing left anymore. Like a dried up well where even if you throw a stone in, you won't hear an echo. The doctor was right. This emotional bullshit, you can actually train yourself to stop feeling it. The clicking of high heels echoed on the stairs. My oldest sister, Zhao Jinju, was coming down. She hadn't changed at all. A dark suit, a perfectly sleek bun, a face of marble and a piercing glare that could freeze your blood. She was the real boss of the Zhu family. The exact same one who had me locked up with her own hands in that detention center. She stopped on the steps, sizing me up from above. Still that same scrutinizing and hypercritical look. "So you're back," she finally muttered. Her voice was just as icy as ever. "In your 3 years there, did you at least learn some rules?" Yeah, the moment those words left her mouth, the atmosphere in the living room froze instantly. Right? My mother stopped crying. My third sister went quiet, and even Zhu Ming calmed down, discreetly stepping to the side, his shifty eyes rolling around, ready to enjoy the show. They were all staring at me. If I had heard that 3 years ago, I would have lost it on the spot for sure. I would have lowered my head, tears in my eyes, and I would have whispered, "Big sister." I would have admitted my mistakes. I would have tried to explain myself at all costs, to tell her how good and obedient I had been in there. I would have begged her to stop looking at me like that. But now I raise my head and fixate on her jawline. The doctor said that looking at someone directly in the eyes easily triggers useless empathy. Staring at the other person's jaw or collarbone is polite and helps you keep a cool head. I spoke up, my voice very soft and very steady, devoid of any emotion, and the moment I uttered the words, "Director Zhu," Zhao Jinju's eyebrows furrowed violently. My mother gasped, "Ting Ting, what did you just call your older sister?" Zhao, today I ignored her. I kept going, to say everything I had prepared in one go. I need 3 things. First, my own room. Second, my phone. And third, my ID papers. I articulated each word without rushing, exactly as if I were filling out paperwork at a company's front desk. My mother panicked. She stepped forward to grab my hand. "Ting Ting, what are you talking about? You're home here. I'm your mother." "Mom, you were traumatized over there, weren't you? Talk to me." "Mom is right here." I dodged her hand again. "Madam Zhu." I looked her straight in the eyes. "May I know if my request can be granted now?" Those 2 words, Madam Zhu, were like a stab right to her heart. Her face turned completely pale, and then her lips began to tremble. Big tears started to fall. How did you call me? Have you lost your mind?" "No, Ting Ting, I'm your mother." "If I don't call you Madam Zhao, should I call you Miss Zhu?" I asked the question in a very sincere tone. The doctor had taught me one thing. Brutal honesty is the best weapon to cut. Emotional blackmail, short. I didn't want to make her angry. I was just stating the facts. She is indeed my mother on a biological level. But from a legal standpoint, she is merely the wife of Zhu Tianyan. Zhao Jinju let out a cold laugh. "That's enough." She cut my mother's whimpering short while staring at me. "Looks like 3 years in that place have given you wings. Do you think that by playing this kind of drama with your family, we're going to give in to your whims?" She turned to the butler. "Give him his ID card and his old phone, and have him stay in the guest room at the back of the 2nd floor. I'd really love to see just how long he's going to keep up this lifeless face." She thought I was playing a role, that I was using this tactic to make them feel guilty or to protest. I didn't talk back. The doctor used to say that truth and falsehood are not emotions. They are facts proven by behavior. Whatever they think is going on in their own heads, it's none of my business. I picked up my canvas bag and took the papers and the phone that the butler handed me. I turned around to head up the stairs. Once I reached the corner of the landing, Zhu Ming caught up with me. He blocked my path. From downstairs, nobody could see us. And right there, that pained look on Zhu Ming's face vanished in an instant. He put on a fake worried look while lowering his voice. "Big brother, I'm really glad you're back." He sighed and leaned in toward me. "But big brother, whatever you do, don't bring up that 100 million incident again. Big sister is still furious. 3, if you go looking for trouble again, she might just send you right back there. 4, when he said that, he kept scanning my face. He's trying to test me, hoping to see me blow up and scream, exactly like I did 3 years ago. In my past life, I was wrongfully accused of embezzlement. Then, all he would have to do is take a theatrical tumble down the stairs. So the whole family would condemn me all over again. Oh, what a familiar script. I stare at his incredibly hypocritical face. Do you want me to be reasonable, or are you hoping I'll keep letting myself get stepped on? I ask him in a soft voice. Zhu Ming freezes. He clearly didn't expect me to hit him with a line like that out of nowhere. What are you even talking about? I'm doing this for your own good. The doctor said that lying is bad, and that slandering is bad. I look him straight in the eyes, my voice even clearer than before, as if I were stating an absolute truth. If you're trying to lecture me, you'll have to prove to me that those 100 million have any connection to me whatsoever. But if you're trying to threaten me, I paused for a brief moment, my tone remaining icily polite. Whoever crosses the line will bear all the consequences. Young Master Zhu, please move aside. Blocking the way. There's also a lack of basic manners. Zhao Ming stares at me as if he's seeing a ghost. There is neither anger nor fear in his eyes, just a reflection of absolute calm. I completely ignore him and walk around his frozen body, heading toward the guest room. At the end of the hallway, the moment I close the door, I definitively cut ties with the entire Zhu family. The room isn't very big, but it's pretty clean. The sheets are brand new, and there's even a small pot of ivy on the table. I stand near the window, gazing down at the perfectly trimmed bushes in the garden. 3 years have passed. This house hasn't changed one bit, but I am no longer the Zhu Ting from 3 years ago. I pull out that old phone, which hasn't been charged for 3 years. The moment I plug it in and the screen lights up, I see an endless amount of unread messages. They are all from 3 years ago. I don't open them. Instead, out of habit, I open the Notes app and type this line, observation log day 1. 3 physical boundary established. The doctor was right. Taking notes is the best way to maintain absolute clarity. I sit on the edge of the bed, watching through the window as the sky slowly darkens. Zhao Ming's face comes back to haunt my thoughts. His incredibly fake smile, his bogus concern. 3 years ago, that exact mask is what got me. I used to look at him like my own little brother. And in the end, he turned on me and betrayed me, backstabbing me to the absolute core. But I don't really hate him, no. The doctor said that hatred takes up way too much energy, and I don't have that kind of energy to waste. However, I remember every single little thing he did. I remember every one of his schemes, the way he slowly pushed me into the depths of the abyss. All of that is carved into my memory. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoes in the hallway, right outside the door. Someone starts knocking. Ting ting. It's Mom. I made you some nice soup. Would you please open the door? Please. I don't move a single millimeter. Come on, Ting Ting. Mom knows you're holding a heavy grudge, but we are a family after all. Blood relations. It sounds so beautiful, doesn't it? 3 years ago, when they sent me far away from here, why did nobody talk about blood relations? I close my eyes and listen to that woman crying behind my door, and I feel absolutely nothing at all. End of observation log, day 1. 3 noise nuisance level medium. 4 emotional fluctuation none. 5 day 2 6 a.m. I woke up right on the dot, 6. It's a habit I picked up while locked inside. No matter how tired I was or how late it was, the night before, at 6 a.m. sharp, I had to open my eyes. Because being late meant punishment. Not getting up meant punishment. Everything had to be done strictly by the rules. Washing up, folding the blanket, you had to hang the towel exactly 5 centimeters away from the corner of the wall. The doctor used to say, when you can't control the outside world, then control your own environment. I looked at my face in the mirror for a moment. I've gotten thin, my eyes are hollow. My skin has become rough, but my eyes are brighter and clearer than before. The doctor explained to me that this was because I had gotten rid of all those useless emotions. Well, when I went downstairs, the entire Zhu family was already gathered. The long dining table was covered with a fancy breakfast spread. There were even those traditional sugar cakes that I used to love before. Every time I came back home, my mother would always buy me those cakes. My third sister, Zhao Yue, saw me and her eyes lit up. She made a move to get up and come toward me, but a single dark glare from my oldest sister froze her in her tracks. Sit down, Zhu Jinju uttered coldly. I walked over to the far end of the table, pulled out my chair, and sat down. My movements didn't make a single sound. Since you're back, we need to establish some ground rules right off the bat. Zhao Jinju put down her coffee cup. The clinking of the porcelain echoed in a way that was particularly piercing in the silence of the dining room. She pulled out a printed sheet of paper that she had placed right next to her and slid it to the center of the table. Rule number 1, you do not have the right to step outside the villa's doors without my permission. Second, you are not to touch any business of the group, and it is strictly forbidden to secretly contact your old acquaintances. Third, it is absolutely forbidden to talk about these past 3 years to anyone whosoever. The Zhu family cannot afford such an embarrassment. She stared at me straight in the eyes, her tone sounding just like a judge sentencing a man to death. Is that crystal clear? My mother whispered beside her, trying to placate her. Your brother just got back. Isn't this a bit overkill? Zhao Jinju cut her off completely. 3, if we sent him there back then, it was precisely so he would drop that nasty habit of being a pathological liar. If we don't impose strict rules on him, he will end up destroying the family sooner or later. Yet again, I looked down at the sheet of paper in front of me. The writing on it was very clear. Every single clause was trying to reduce me to nothing but an invisible object. Zhu Ming, who was sitting right next to Zhu Jinju, handed her a tissue with sickening thoughtfulness, saying in a calculated, soft voice, "Big sister, don't be angry. Big brother will understand that you're doing this for his own good." He turned his head toward me, with that condescending pity in his eyes, just like a winner. Big brother, don't hold a grudge against our big sister. The family only wants what's best for you. 3, as long as you stay well-behaved and obedient, we will all remain a family. For your own good. Those few words felt like a dull saw slowly scraping against the scab of a barely healed wound. I put down my utensils, raised my head to look at Zhu Jinju. Director Zhu, I have a question. Are you welcoming me back home, or are you bringing a prisoner back to his cell? Zhao Jinju's face completely fell. What on earth are you talking about? According to the laws of our country, illegally, restricting an individual's freedom is a crime. I pulled out my old cell phone and pressed the record button, right in front of everyone. Now please speak into my phone and repeat for me once more those 3 house rules you just dictated. The dining room plunged into an immediate silence, a dead silence. My father dropped the newspaper he was holding, his eyebrows furrowing in anger, while my mother, terrified, slapped both hands over her mouth. His eyes expressed nothing but cold indifference. Zhao Jinju looked as if she had just been slapped right across the face. She stood up abruptly. Zhu Ting, you actually dare talk to me about the law. Who do you think you are? I am Zhu Ting. I stared at her collarbone, my voice absolutely calm. The doctor said, if you can't figure out someone's true intentions, then use recordings to preserve evidence. 3. What you just demanded goes way beyond the scope of family rules. It purely and simply amounts to unlawful confinement. I stood up and slid the phone into my pocket, with gestures as steady as a professor's. If you don't intend to start over from scratch, I will act as if this piece of paper never existed. Zhao Jinju was shaking with rage. She pointed her finger at me, her hand trembling. You ungrateful brat. 3 years spent in that place, and you still haven't learned the rules. But you sure learned how to turn on your own family. My second sister, Zhu Ruxiao, who hadn't said a single word until now, adjusted her glasses, her gaze filled with that icy coldness typical of lawyers. She scrutinized me from head to toe. Wow, Ting Ting, you've changed. She finally let out, you've grown more cunning. You've figured out how to use this kind of method to seek attention, or rather for blackmail purposes. She turned her head toward Zhu Jinju, her tone filled with absolute certainty. Big sister in psychology. This behavior is called acquired sociopathy. He isn't trying to be reasonable, he's just trying to regain control. I stared at this lawyer of a second sister. 3 years ago, she was the exact one who, with her relentless logic, had managed to connect all the fake testimonies to forge an indestructible chain, condemning me with absolutely no way out. Second sister, I called out very politely, since you know so much about the law, you should know that without a court order, absolutely nobody has the right to restrict a citizen's freedom of movement. As for the idea of seeking attention, I flashed a faint self-deprecating smile, a smile that was barely visible. What makes you think that? I still give a single crap about your attention, the doctor said. You shouldn't try to wake up those who are pretending to sleep. You need to straight up rip the blanket off them. I turned around, without even glancing at their shocked faces. I headed straight for the door. 3. Stop right there, with Zhu Jinju screaming right behind me. I stopped and turned my head. 3. Does Director Zhu have anything else to add? Where do you think you're going? To get a new SIM card, I replied in a neutral tone. And I'm going to stop by the hospital at the same time. Why are you going to the hospital? My mother asked hurriedly. The doctor said that after being subjected to a highly stressful environment for so long, I needed regular psychological evaluations to ensure that I don't pose a danger. I stared at Zhu Ming. My gaze lingered for a split second on his falsely innocent face. After all, young Master Zhu looks so fragile. If I ever accidentally bumped into him, he might just fall by accident again, right? But no. Zhao Ming's face turned pale all of a sudden. That terror of being exposed flashed through his eyes like lightning. I pushed the big front door open, the sunlight blinding me for a moment. I didn't look back because I knew very well that at this exact moment, in the Zhu family living room, Zhao Ming would surely go find my second sister. He would discuss the best, most radical method to eliminate me once and for all, me, this disruptive element. But as for me, I just have to wait. The doctor said, yes, bad people always end up leaving tracks because of their greed. You just have to wait for them to make a wrong move and be there to make them pay the bill. Observation log day 2. The game of chess begins. Strong emotional fluctuations in the subjects. The noise nuisance index is on the rise. When I left the hospital, it was already past 4 p.m. The results of the psychological evaluation are pretty good. The doctor said that all my parameters were very stable, that I wasn't aggressive nor suicidal for that matter. It's just that in terms of emotional resonance, my scores are shockingly low. The doctor told me that this was normal. Those who survive that kind of place all end up developing a certain emotional numbness. It doesn't matter to me. Anyway, feeling emotions or not, doesn't matter to me anymore. I just got my phone line back. I slid the SIM card in, and upon turning it on, an avalanche of messages flooded in. They are all from 3 years ago. Some were from classmates, former colleagues, and there were a few from Zhu Yue. Ting Ting, where are you, Ting Ting? Please answer me. Brother Ting Ting is begging you answer. I didn't even read the rest. I deleted everything straight away. The past belongs to the past. I headed toward the bus stop. Next to me, there was an old lady. She was holding a grocery basket, probably on her way home from the market. She glanced at me, likely thinking that my clothes looked way too worn out. She stared for a bit, but didn't say anything. I love this feeling. Nobody knows me. Nobody looks at me with that look that says, hey, that's the cursed son of the Zoo family. The bus arrived. I got on and found myself a seat by the window. The bus rolled along swaying gently. I looked out the window at these familiar streets, these roads that I had traveled countless times 3 years ago. Honestly, this city is just as bustling as ever, just as vibrant. But when I look at it, it's like looking at an old photo with faded colors. Everything is still there. But at the same time, it's as if nothing exists anymore. My phone vibrated. It was a text from an unknown number, a single sentence. Send me your evaluation results from today. I replied with a simple, okay. The doctor had told me that this man was the only person who truly wanted what was best for me, even if his kindness is a bit icy, a bit ruthless, and sometimes scary. But he's right. In this world, only rules never betray you. So only order is eternal. I leaned back against the seat and closed my eyes. The memories of that night 3 years ago came rushing back to me. Back when I had just been locked up, I was shut in a room with 4 white walls. No window, no bed. Just a chair as hard as stone. They made me sit there, facing the wall, sitting for days on end. The first day I cried. The second day I screamed. The third day I begged. And by the 4th day, I couldn't make a single sound. I just sat there staring at that white wall. From staring at it so much, it was like I finally understood everything. Later, the doctor said that it was called learned helplessness. And then he started teaching me other things. How to observe, how to record everything, how to control my emotions. He replaced my feelings with logic. He told me that only by mastering all of this could I get out of there and never get hurt by anyone ever again. I learned my lesson. I truly learned it. The bus arrived at my stop. I got off the vehicle and walked toward the house. When I arrived in front of the Zoo family villa, it was already dark. The grand gate was open. Inside it was brightly lit and you could faintly hear voices and laughter. They must have had guests over. I walked in. The living room was packed with people. Nothing but the extended Zoo family and a few business partners. They were all sitting together drinking, tea, eating pastries, and chatting happily. But when they saw me walk in, the living room fell silent in a fraction of a second. Everyone locked their eyes on me. Their gaze, how should I put it? It was like they were looking at a monkey in a zoo. There was curiosity, disgust, and even a bit of morbid fascination. Is that the one who was locked up for 3 years? An aunt whispered, lowering her voice toward her neighbor. Keep your voice down. I heard that people who come out of that kind of place aren't exactly sane anymore. Our little Ming is still way more mature. Look at how well he handles the company. Goes to show that a biological son isn't worth the one you actually raised yourself. Those words floated right into my ears, without me missing a single crumb. I didn't stop. I walked straight toward the water dispenser. I grabbed a clean glass, filled it with lukewarm water, and drank slowly. The doctor told me other people's judgment is nothing but their own subjective projection, not your objective reality. I didn't give a damn, but I noticed that Zhu Ming wasn't around. Where had he gone? It was at that exact moment that footsteps echoed on the stairs. Zhao Ming was coming down, dressed in brand new clothes. A casual sky blue suit jacket, his hair styled incredibly neatly. He was sporting a perfect smile. The moment he saw me, his eyes lit up. He approached me holding a flute of champagne. Big brother, you're back, he blurted out with a smile. His voice was neither too loud nor too soft, just enough for everyone around to hear. Big brother, why didn't you let us know you were going out today? I was worried about you, you know. He stood right in front of me and scanned me from head to toe. Big brother, your clothes are way too old. Later on, I'll take you out to buy some new ones. Someone from the zoo. Family can't go out dressed like that. People will mock us. Those words were filled with such thoughtfulness, such great maturity. The relatives around us nodded their heads. Wow, that Zhu Ming is so generous, so good, so nice to his big brother. I said nothing. I just kept drinking my water. Zhao Ming probably thought that wasn't enough. So he took another step toward me and lowered his voice to whisper to me at a volume only I could hear. You see, big brother, even though you're back, nobody is happy to see you here. You're nothing but trash that nobody wants. As soon as he finished his sentence, he stepped back half a step. His face was immediately twisted into an expression of terror, and he threw his hands up in an exaggerated way. Big brother, don't get mad. I just wanted to warn you nicely. The relatives all gasped. Someone even started calling security. That's when Zhu Jinju rushed out from the crowd, her face pale with anger. Zhao Ting, what the hell is wrong with you now? Don't you realize what kind of event today is? She didn't even take the trouble to ask what had happened. She straight up pinned the blame on me. Zhao Ming HID behind. Zhao Jinju his shoulders, trembling like a frightened rabbit. Big sister, don't blame him. He just got out of that kind of place. It's normal for him to be emotionally unstable. It's nothing. I'm fine. As long as my brother doesn't hit me. He was insinuating in front of everyone that I had violent tendencies, that I was a dangerous individual. I looked at his face that practically oozed innocence. Then I met Zhu Jinju's furious gaze. Finally, my eyes swept over my parents standing a bit further away. They too were frowning, their eyes filled with suspicion. This is my family. I set my glass down on the table, the bottom of the glass hitting the surface with a slight clack. I took a step forward to stop right in front of Zhu Ming. He thought I was going to react like 3 years ago, that I was going to break down, scream, and desperately defend myself, saying that I didn't want to hit anyone. A gleam of triumph flashed through his eyes, but I did none of that. I raised my hand, and with absolute calmness, I slapped him right across the face. That loud crack echoed like a thunderclap throughout the living room. From the shock, Zhu Ming's head snapped to the side, and he stumbled back 2 steps. The champagne flute he was holding shattered on the floor. A dead silence invaded the room. Everyone was utterly dumbfounded, even Zhu Jin. Zhu stood frozen, as if she couldn't process that I had actually dared to raise a hand. Zhu Ming held his rapidly swelling cheek and looked at me with a pitiful expression, his tears streaming down all at once. "Big brother, why did you hit me?" My mother let out a piercing scream and rushed over to hug Zhu Ming. She shoved me away violently. You're insane. How dare you hit Xiao Ming?" Pushed backward, I took 2 steps back before regaining my balance. Facing the reproaches of the entire room, I adjusted my shirt cuffs. My tone remained so calm it could give you goosebumps. "The doctor said that slander is bad behavior, and as for me, I am in charge of stopping bad behavior." I looked at Zhao Ming without a single shred of emotion in my eyes. "You just verbally attacked me, and you tried to create the illusion that I was threatening you with your gestures. That is slander against me. Right and wrong are not a matter of feelings but of factual evidence. The one who crosses the line first bears the consequences. This slap is the final bill." My words plunged the living room into a silence that was even more heavy and icy. They stared at me as if I were a machine, devoid of any feelings. Zhao Jinju finally snapped out of it, shaking with rage. "Not only are you completely incorrigible, but now you've also started getting violent. Looks like your 3 years in reform school still haven't taught you how to behave like a human being," she screamed, severely. She turned toward the butler, shouting, "Go fetch a rope and tie him up. Tell security to call the police." The atmosphere in the hall was freezing, Zhao Jinju's voice still echoing. The butler was already approaching, with 2 security guards to surround me. My mother pressed Zhu Ming tightly against her, as if protecting a baby threatened by a monster. Her eyes expressed nothing but disgust toward me. My father, Zhu Jianan, stepped forward from the crowd. He spoke in a deep voice filled with unquestionable authority. "Zhao Ting, you disappoint me greatly." He looked at me, his eyes filled with disappointment and anger. 3 years ago, you stole money and you lied. If we sent you to reform school, it was to save you. And now today, you dare commit an assault in public? Do you still have even the slightest respect for this family? I looked at him. He hadn't changed. He still loved to place himself on a moral pedestal, to judge every situation. He didn't even ask what Zhu Ming had said to me. He just focused on the result. I had struck him. 2 guards reached out their arms to grab me by the shoulders. I turned slightly to dodge their hands. The doctor used to say that when everything becomes chaotic, the only sense of security comes from the rules. I ignored the guards. Instead, I pulled my phone out of my pocket. Yes, my fingers tapped the screen, my gestures carrying surgical precision without the slightest hesitation. "Yes," Zhao Jinju sneered. "Oh, what? You want to record us again? What's the point of recording at home? Zhao Ting, I swear you won't walk out that door today." I raised my head to look her straight in the eyes. Yes, then, right in front of everyone, I dialed 3 digits 110. The grand living room plunged into a dead silence. My father's face darkened so much it was terrifying. He clearly didn't expect me to call the cops myself. The call was picked up very quickly. "Hello, I would like to report an incident. In this villa, I am being held against my will. It is unlawful confinement, and they are trying to use physical violence against me." My voice was absolutely calm. My delivery was clear, and I gave the exact address of the house without stuttering. There are numerous witnesses on site. The evidence has already been backed up to the cloud. Please send a patrol as soon as possible. Thank you. I hung up. I slid the phone into my pocket. Zhao Jinju was fuming. "You called the police?" "Zhao Ting, you actually dared call the police. To have your own parents and sister arrested? Director Zhu, you misunderstand." I corrected her coldly. "The police aren't coming to arrest family. They're coming to deal with criminals." She was about to fire back, but my father stopped her dead in her tracks. He stared at me, and for the first time, I saw a hint of calculation in his eyes. He is a man who values his reputation above all else. If the cops actually showed up, tomorrow's headlines would read, "First day back for the Zhu family's biological child. They called the police for help." The shares of the Zhu Corporation would crash on the stock market. Ting Ting, put that phone down. "We can talk this out." My mother softened her tone, trying to use that disgusting maternal love to calm the situation. "We're doing this for your own good. Just apologize to Xiaoming, and we won't speak of it again." The doctor used to say that cheap tears and belated comfort are nothing but noise. I cut her off by raising my wrist to look at my watch. "The police will be here in 5 minutes. Director Zhu, you have 5 minutes left to decide. Either you tell your guards to back off, or we wait for the police to handle it by force." The guards looked at each other petrified. There was no way they were going to get into legal trouble. Zhao Ming curled up in my mother's arms, his face pale. He He had surely never seen such a confrontation before. Before, all he had to do was shed 2 tiny tears, and I would find myself locked in the dungeon. Back then, they would starve me and send me to that nightmarish reform school. But today, I have no more tears to shed. Even my heart was left buried in that center. 5 minutes later, police sirens echoed in the courtyard. The red and blue flashing lights reflected off the living room's bay windows. It was blinding. My third sister, Zhao Yiwei, ran to open the door, completely panicking. The police officers walked in with grave looks. Who called law enforcement? I raised my hand, walking through the crowd to step forward. Hello, it was me. Officer, here is my ID. I handed him my brand new ID card. And at the same time, I slid my phone over to him. This is the voice recording of Madam Zhao Jinju, my oldest sister, notifying me that she was confining me here. And here is the video, recording of those guards who tried to illegally detain me. Zhu Jinju's face completely fell. My second sister, Zhu Ruxiao, that lawyer who used to boast about never losing a single lawsuit, stood frozen on the spot, totally speechless. After listening to the recording, the officer furrowed his brows and looked at my father. Hello, Mr. Zhu. In our country, restricting someone's individual freedom is a crime, punishable by law, even if it concerns your own child. From the moment they are of legal age, they are an independent individual. My father took a deep breath, trying to save face. Officer, this is just a family matter. The child just got back. He is emotionally unstable. The recording proves on the contrary that he is perfectly calm. The officer closed his notebook with a very professional tone. On the contrary, you are the ones who crowded together to block the person who called the police Mr. Zhu. If you don't want to end up at the station to make a statement, please dismiss your security guards immediately and promise to never again restrict the legal rights of Mr. Zhu Ting. The officer turned to me. Mr. Zhao Ting, if you need to request a protective order or initiate legal proceedings, we can assist you. I looked at this whole big family, the pale face of my father, the fury of Zhu Jinju, the shock of my mother, the terror of Zhu Ming, and the unreadable expressions on the faces of my second and third sisters. That won't be necessary, officer. I bowed very politely. As long as they understand that today, I am no longer subject to this family's rules, but solely protected by the law, that'll do. After the police left, the living room was plunged into a dead silence. The other members of the family had already found an excuse to slip away. Only the core of the Zhu family remained. My father stood in the shadows, staring at me intently, as if he wanted to read right through me. What on earth did you actually learn? Over there, he asked me in an icy tone. I stopped on the stairs, my hand resting on the freezing handrail. I learned how to deal with monsters. I turned around looking down at them. The doctor used to say, when a man is stripped of all his dignity, either he dies in the mud or he learns how to use the system against the system itself. Mr. Zhu, Mrs. Zhu, Director Zhu. I called them by their titles, one by one in a voice completely devoid of emotion. Welcome to my world. 3. With those words, I went back to the guest room. I gently locked the door. Observation log day 4. External system intervention successful. The nuisances have been cut off by force. The Zhu family is starting to feel fear. The doctor used to say, fear is the only remedy to bring them back to reality. I sat on the edge of the bed. I looked at the pitch black night outside the window. Downstairs, the silence had returned. All those screams and that racket had disappeared. The members of the Zhu family must have scattered, each returning to their own room to digest what went down tonight. I wonder what they're thinking right now. Are they calling me an ungrateful little brat? Or do they regret their decision to have me locked up over there? Or maybe they aren't thinking about anything at all. People of their kind never question themselves. They always shift the blame onto others. I lay down, staring at the ceiling. An immaculately white ceiling, just like the one in the isolation cell back at the reform school. Back when I was locked up there, I used to spend my days lying down staring at that ceiling for days on end. Sometimes I would think, what if I die here? Would they be sad? Would Yue or my mother cry? Would my father have any regrets? Would my sisters think of me? And then I finally realized that no, they would just be relieved. Relieved that they no longer had to worry about this son who was a stain on the family. That's why I couldn't die. I had to survive. Survive to get out of there. Survive to be able to stand upright right in front of them, so they could see the son they themselves destroyed, see how he managed to come back to life. Then my phone vibrated. I picked it up to look. It was a message from that number. What happened tonight? Log it. I replied, already done. Very well. Keep observing. I put my phone down and closed my eyes. The doctor was right. I am his masterpiece. He is the one who shaped me with his own hands. Without him, I wouldn't be who I am today. But sometimes I wonder, if I hadn't met him back then, what would I look like today? Yeah, I'd probably be dead already, wouldn't I? Dead in that room with the 4 white walls. Dead because of those electroshocks and those isolations repeated, day after day. Dead in that endless despair, yeah. So I should thank him. Even if his methods were a bit scary, he allowed me to survive. And that's all that matters. End of observation log day 4. Noise level high, 3 emotional fluctuation 5. The next morning after the police incident, The butler knocked on my door. He said that Mr. Zhao and Director Zhu were waiting for me in the study. I put on that faded gray shirt, rigorously buttoning the collar all the way to the top. As usual, walking down the stairs at that moment, the living room was plunged into a dead silence. My mother was sitting on the couch, her eyes swollen like peaches. Seeing me walk down, her lips trembled. She wanted to say something, but no sound came out. I ignored her. I headed straight for the study. The door was ajar. My father was seated behind his huge rosewood desk, while Zhu Jinju stood near the bay window. This is where the center of power of the Zhu family lies. Before just stepping foot into this room would make my hands sweat from stress. I used to watch their expressions with extreme caution, terrified of saying a single word out of turn that would make them angry. I used to be terrified that he would tell me again that I wasn't as good as Zhu Ming, but now I just think that the soundproofing in here isn't bad at all. I walked in, pulled out the chair across from the desk, and sat down. My movements were very light, without making the slightest scraping sound. My father stared at me, his brows deeply furrowed. He is a man who values his image above all else, used to controlling everything. The arrival of the police last night made him violently realize that his good, old family discipline no longer worked on me, so he opted for a business negotiator approach instead. Zhu Jinju stepped forward and tossed a thick file in front of me, the sheets scattering. On the very first page, it read, Non-disclosure agreement and waiver of inheritance rights statement. Read it, Zhu Jinju said in an icy tone, with her usual arrogance. All you have to do is sign this document. 3. You commit to not leaking anything to the outside, and you promise to never touch Zhu Ming again. In exchange, you'll be able to withdraw 500,000 in allowance each month from the family fund. You can keep playing the young master of the Zhu family. Peace, but on one condition: you must be docile. I looked down at the file. It was filled with tiny clauses, all designed to restrict me, forbidden to reveal my confinement at the reform school 3 years ago, forbidden to harm the reputation of the Zhu family and Zhu Ming, voluntary waiver of all my shares in the Zhu group and my inheritance rights. The penalties for breaching it were astronomical. My father picked up his teacup and took a sip. Listen to me carefully. It's not that there's no place for you in this family. Yes, but the scene you made last night was truly pathetic. I discussed it with your big sister. If you sign this, we'll let bygones be bygones. 3 years. We're doing this for your own good, to keep you from going down the wrong path in the future. That phrase, "we're doing this for your own good," is truly the perfect excuse. 3 years ago, it was with that exact phrase that they shoved me into a car and locked me in that hole, cut off from the world. And today, they're using those same words again to try to buy my silence for the rest of my days. I didn't feel any anger, not even a single ounce of grief. I simply picked up a pen from the table and uncapped it. Seeing my compliance, a mocking smile formed on Zhu Jinju's lips. Good, you're finally being reasonable. If I'd known money was all it took to fix everything, we wouldn't have needed to go to such extremes 3 years ago. I'm willing to sign, I murmured in a soft voice. My voice was as stable and flat as the flat line of a heart monitor. But the rights and obligations in this contract are unbalanced. I need to add an extra clause. My father set his teacup back down, his gaze piercing. What do you want to add? Is this not enough money for you? No, Zhu Jinju sneered. No, I shook my head. Pen in hand, I wrote a line in the blank space at the very end of the agreement, clearly enunciating each word in a handwriting so sharp it looked like it was printed in bold. Once finished, I flipped the document and slid it toward them. I agreed to waive my inheritance rights. I agreed to maintain my silence. But as my exchange condition, I demand to retain my right to sue for illegal confinement and emotional distress dating back to 3 years ago. The study was instantly plunged into a dead silence. My father's face turned pale all at once. Zhu Jinju slammed the table, violently pointing her finger at me and screaming, Zhu Ting, you are completely insane. 3. Retain your right to sue. You want to drag us to court? Yes. I stared at her jawline. The doctor said that right and wrong are not based on emotions, but on proven actions. You want to use this contract to limit my present actions, so I will use the law to make you pay for your past actions. That's what you call a fair trade. 3. My father leapt up from his seat. I am your own father, and your big sister shares your own blood, and now you dare hold us accountable. Do you have no heart? 3. His voice echoed so loudly that the teacup lid was rattling. I remained seated on my chair without even flinching. 3. Yes, I am going to hold you accountable. I held my father's gaze. Because the doctor said that loving oneself is the golden rule. I will never yield again to tears or blood ties. Stop your little act. Zhao Jinju exploded, shaking with rage. Who do you think you are? What kind of proof do you even have to accuse us? Stop your little act. Those few words triggered with surgical precision my system directive. Far from getting angry, I even felt my own body temperature drop at a dizzying rate. I stood up, adjusted my shirt cuffs, and in a tone of unprecedented icy politeness, Director, Zhao, do you want me to be reasonable? Or do you expect me to keep taking your abuse without flinching. What makes you think I still need your trust? I locked eyes with them, their eyes wide with shock and incomprehension, and I gently placed the pen back on the table. I don't have to justify myself. You only explain yourself to people who matter. No, since we can't reach an agreement, then we're calling the whole thing off. No, I'm not signing anything. What you owe me isn't an apology, nor is it money, no. It's the consequences of your actions. I turned around and headed toward the exit of the study. Behind me, my father and Zhu Jinju stared intently at my silhouette. For the first time, they realized that I was no longer that son who, at the slightest hurtful remark from them, would break down in tears to beg for their forgiveness. I had become a literal machine, programmed and methodical, a monster who was now completely beyond their control. I opened the study door. Zhao Ming was standing right there in the hallway. He was holding a plate of sliced fruit, his face as white as a sheet. Clearly, he had been eavesdropping at the door for a while. When he saw me come out, he instinctively flinched back. His hand trembled, and a silver fork dropped from the plate onto the carpet. He looked at me, his eyes having lost all of yesterday's arrogant provocation and that fake hypocritical innocence. Nothing was left but absolute naked panic. Before, all he had to do was whimper and play sick, to make me fly off the handle, to make me lose my mind. And then by using my family, he would trample me over and over again. But now he just realized that I am no longer begging for their love, that I am no longer trying to get attention. I don't even care about the inheritance of the zoo group or their money. An MC who has nothing left to lose can no longer be manipulated by guilt. I stopped. I glanced at the fork on the floor. Mr. Zhu, I called. Zhao Ming trembled all over. Big brother, you can keep up your little act? I leaned in slightly and whispered to him in an absolutely calm voice, but a quick word of advice: the next time you pull a dirty trick, make sure you erase your tracks. Because if I ever catch you, I will send you over there and you will live through the exact same 3 years that I spent. Zhao Ming's legs gave out and his back slammed against the wall. He was incapable of uttering a single sentence to defend himself. I stood back up, walked around him, and went back into my room. I pulled out my old phone, opened the Notes app. Observation log day 5. Negotiations failed. Refusal to sign their unequal treaty. 3 test results. They want a docile son, and as for me, I just want a fair trial. 4 additional note. The target Zhu Ming shows signs of extreme fear. The doctor said that was a good sign. Back in the room, I stood near the window, observing the garden below. Zhao Ming still hadn't moved from the hallway. I could hear his heavy, ragged breathing. He was truly terrified. At the same time, after all these years, he had never seen me react like this. The old me was just a well-trained dog. Even if mistreated, I would have never dared to bite. But today, I have already died once, and someone who has already died is no longer afraid of anything. Suddenly, the memories of my days at the reform school resurfaced. Back then, when I had just entered, I didn't know the rules. Every single day, I was punished. Every single day, I was electrocuted. Every single day, locked up in isolation. Once the shocks made me lose consciousness. When I woke up, I was lying on the floor, my mouth bleeding because I had bitten my tongue. Someone was sitting right next to me. He was wearing a white lab coat, gold-rimmed glasses, and his face was totally expressionless. "You're awake?" he asked. "Yes." I looked at him, incapable of uttering a word. "My name is Wei Yuru. I am the doctor here." He told me, "Starting today, I am the one taking care of you." At the time, I thought he was coming to save me. Later, I understood that he was there to break me and rebuild me. He told me that I was too weak, too easy to hurt, too easy to manipulate. He said that I needed a new way to live. How to do it. He taught me his rules one by one. Trust nobody, count on nobody. 3, love nobody. 3, believe only in rules, believe only in evidence. 3, believe only in yourself. At first, I couldn't do it. 3, I spent all my time crying. I was homesick. I kept hoping that one day, Mom and Dad would come pick me up. Later on, he stopped teaching me, leaving me to figure it out by myself. He placed a mirror in the isolation room and forced me to look at my own reflection. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4. I stared at my reflection, going from tears to apathy, from breaking down to absolute calmness. And I finally understood. My parents wouldn't come. My sister wouldn't come. Nobody would come to save me. The only one who could save me was myself. Since that day, I changed. No more tears. No more begging. No more trust. The day I get out, I swore to make every single one of them taste the pain I suffered. And today I'm free. End of the 5th day of observation. The target's fear level has increased. Emotional fluctuation at 5. Early the next morning, I decided to head out. Not to go for a stroll, but to go to the company, the headquarters of the zoo group. These 2 twin towers are the symbol of this city. 3 years ago, I did an internship there. Back then, I stupidly believed that all it took was hard work to bridge the gap between Zhu Ming and me in our parents' hearts. But instead, I was handcuffed in public, thrown into a car, and sent to the reform school. Today, I want to go back there, not for anything else, just to recover the personal belongings I left behind. The doctor said that taking back what belongs to me is part of the process of rebuilding my own boundaries. I didn't warn anyone. I took a taxi all by myself. When I got out, the sun blinded me. With my faded canvas bag in hand, I headed toward the main entrance. Hold it right there. The guard blocked my path. He judged my old shirt from head to toe, with barely hidden disgust. Street vendors go through the back door. This is the main entrance. I stopped, looking at his badge. I replied, I'm not selling anything. My voice was soft but firm. I am looking for Zhu Jinju, the guard, sneered as if he had just heard a good joke. See, Director Zhu, who even are you? Do you have an appointment? No, I replied honestly. But I have this. I pulled a document out of my bag. It was a copy of the termination agreement that I had signed 3 years ago. The official stamp of the Zhu group was still on it. I want to recover the personal belongings left in my old office. Beat it, beat it, beat it. Who do you think you're scamming with your scrap of paper? The guard pushed me away impatiently. He had brutal strength. My skinny silhouette wavered and I took 2 steps back. The employees passing, I started crowding around, whispering and pointing their fingers at me. Hey, isn't that the biological son of the Zhu family? Keep your voice down. I heard that he had psychiatric problems. He was locked up for years. Young Master Zhu Ming sent out a memo this morning, saying his brother was unstable right now, and asked us to be lenient if we ran into him. Ah, I see. Zhao Ming had already dug my grave in advance. With this poisonously sweet method, he had stamped the label of a lunatic onto everyone's minds. I looked at the guard, then I looked at those gossip-hungry faces. In their eyes, there was only pity and mockery, but absolutely zero respect. Mr. Zhu, leave the premises immediately. The guard stepped forward again, trying to drag me by force, toward the side of the road. Director Zhu made it clear, mentally unstable individuals like you are strictly forbidden from approaching the company lobby. He firmly gripped my arm. It hurt, but I didn't struggle. The doctor said that when facing the illegal use of physical force, the best counterattack isn't violence, but transparency. I freed one of my hands, pulled out my old phone to start a live stream, and immediately aimed the lens at the Zhu group, at their giant logo, then at the guard's arrogant face. Hello everyone. I fixate on the camera, my tone as calm as if I were reading the news. I am Zhu Ting, the biological son of the Zhu family, reported missing for 3 years. Today, I am back at the Zhu group to recover my personal belongings, but this guard is stopping me, under the pretext that Director Zhu has deemed me psychologically unstable. The guard freezes. Today around us, the crowd goes wild. The number of viewers on the live stream is skyrocketing. The ridiculous dramas of the wealthy Zhu family have always fascinated the city. Now I would like to ask this guard a question. I point the lens at him without even flinching. What is the legal basis that allows you to claim I am unstable? A professional psychiatric evaluation, or simply a casual statement from Director? Zhao, the guard, loses his words. He tries to grab my phone. Stop, put that device down, stop filming. I dodge him deftly and take the opportunity to show my ID card to the camera. If I am crazy, show me a restraining order. If you don't have one, your current behavior amounts to provocation and harassment. You are obstructing the exercise of my rights as a citizen. Stop. He's completely nuts. Enrages the guard red with shame. Is that so? You say that I am sick. I replied to him in a placid voice, sweeping my gaze across everyone present. In that case, I will follow my doctor's protocol. Since you label me as crazy, know that a crazy person can be forgiven for any of his actions, right? I take a step forward and slam violently into his chest. My bones are hard. The impact makes him grimace in pain, yet he doesn't even dare to fight back, because the lens is trained right on him, because there are already more than 10,000 people on the live stream. Zhao Ting, have you finished making a scene? A sharp cutting female voice echoed from inside the lobby. Zhao Jinju, perched on her red-bottomed stilettos, strode out, followed by a whole army of executives. She glared at the crowd surrounding us, then at my phone. Her face turned purple. She was so furious. Cut that off. Cut this live stream right now. She rushed toward me, almost flushing, her voice loaded with authority. I stared at her flawless makeup. Director Zhu. I didn't call her my big sister. I'm not making a scene. I'm just settling scores. 3 years ago, it was right here that you publicly announced that I had stolen 100 million before exiling me. 3 years later, it is right here again that you publicly announced that I am sick to block my path. I trained the lens right on her face, my tone incredibly flat without the slightest emotion. You stripped me of my reputation, and now you want to strip me of my right to move freely. What makes you think that I am still going to obey you? Zhao Jinju trembled all over from sheer rage. She raised her hand, ready to slap me. I didn't step back. I just looked at the lens. The doctor says that if you want to make me disappear, the best solution is to kill me. But if you aren't capable of that, then you are going to have to learn to submit to my rules. Zhao Jinju's hand froze in midair. She saw the live stream chat flooded with comments, like Director Zhu is a bully, and the Zhu family is truly disgusting to this younger brother. She finally understood that the Zhu Ting she could manipulate at will was already dead, chained up in that reform school. Zhu Ting, you disappoint me immensely. She pulled her hand back, her voice icy. By doing this, aside from bringing shame upon the Zhu family, what do you gain from it? What do you gain? I turned the question back on her with a chuckle. I'm not trying to gain anything. I just want you guys to suffer. Director Zhu, do you want me to be reasonable or do you want me to keep getting crushed? Zhao Jinju gritted her teeth, staring at me with pure rage, but she couldn't get a single word out. Right at that moment, a black Bentley pulled up to the curb. My second sister Zhu Ruxiao, that high-flying lawyer, dressed in a flawless suit, pushed the door open and stepped out. She observed the scene with a gaze full of professional judgment. Zhao Ting, that's enough. She walked over and her tone even had a hint of manipulative softness. Yes, I'm a lawyer, but I'm also your big sister. Yeah, your current state is really not appropriate for displaying yourself in public. Come with me, I'll take you to the hospital to get a full evaluation, okay? She was trying to use her jargon to pass this off as mental illness. Looking at her, I cut the live stream because I knew that what was coming next didn't need to be heard by strangers. Big sister, I called out politely, since you're here as a lawyer, show me your representation mandate right now. If you don't have it, please leave. Otherwise, you're going to owe me way more than just a simple apology. When my second sister, Zhao Ruxiao, stood in front of me, everything around us seemed to freeze. She was as elegant as ever. Her suit didn't have a single wrinkle, and the gaze she directed at me was dripping with condescending pity. I know that look all too well. 3 years ago, it was with that exact same look that she watched me while I was pinned to the floor, struggling as she analyzed, word for word, my so-called criminal psychology. 3. Zhao Ting, if you're done throwing your tantrum, get in the car with me. My sister's voice was soft, as if she were coaxing a disobedient child. 3. Your current mood swings are completely beyond what is normal. 4. You need specialized evaluation and treatment. She turned her head and shot a reassuring look at Zhu Jinju. Don't panic. 5. Then she turned back to me. As your family, we have a duty to look out for your health. Be good. Don't make this situation even more embarrassing. The words, family and look out for you, coming out of her mouth had the nauseating stench of rotten medicine. I stared at her gold-rimmed glasses on her nose. Behind the lenses, her eyes were devoid of any familial affection. There was only calculation. She wanted to use her title to lock me up again in a cage for the mentally ill. My doctor told me, when someone tries to define you with fake authority, you shouldn't defend yourself. You must unmask them. I stepped back, one small step to maintain a safe distance. Big sister, I called out softly, in a perfectly calm voice without the slightest emotion. In what capacity are you speaking to me right now? My sister froze for a second, her brows furrowing slightly. I'm your sister, obviously. If you are my sister, then keep your professional jargon to yourself. I stared at her jawline, articulating every word. But if you are here as a lawyer, then show me your professional license and the official power of attorney from Director Zhu. Yeah, otherwise this diagnosis you are pushing on me right now not only lacks any legal basis, but also amounts to defamation. My second sister's face stiffened. She clearly didn't expect me to use her own professional logic against her to shut her down. Zhu Ting, do you really have to be this aggressive? It's for your own good, you know. For my own good, I cut her off, letting a tiny smirk form at the corner of my lips, but without the slightest warmth. 3 years ago, under the pretext that it was for my own good, you provided the court with a report on my psychological instability, completely crushing my absolute last hope. And today, you still want to use that pretext to lock me up in another hospital room. I took a step toward her, staring intensely at her glasses. Are you my doctor or my executioner? My second sister instinctively avoided my gaze and her voice darkened. 3. Zhu Ting, you are completely paranoid. 3. This is pure persecution mania. Every single act of rebellion from you today proves that you truly need professional help. 3. Proves I shot back. In medicine, truth or falsehood isn't based on feelings, but on behavioral evidence. I pulled out my phone and opened a document I had downloaded while I was waiting. According to the mental health law, any forced medical treatment against the patient's will is illegal. Second sister, you are a renowned lawyer. You should know this much better than I do. If you take me away by force today, I will use it as evidence to sue you and get you disbarred. My sister's pupils violently contracted. What mattered most to her was that perfect facade of professionalism. I detected a flash of humiliated rage deep within her eyes. You are truly beyond saving. She could no longer maintain her mask of artificial sweetness. Her voice became shrill. You think that by learning 2 or 3 articles of law, you're going to be able to overturn everything. Yeah, this selfishness and this deeply rooted baseness inside of you. You will never be able to change them. Yeah, never change. Yeah, those words acted like a fine steel needle, stabbing right with precision into my trigger point, yeah. My gaze instantly turned ice cold. The surrounding noise seemed to fade away at that moment, leaving behind nothing but a deadly chill. You're right. I stared at her in a tone more polite than ever, almost with courtesy. It's true I can't change. I can't erase the memory of being pushed into the abyss 3 years ago by my own sister. And I can't erase that place either, nor that instinct where you had to calculate everything, every single minute, just to survive. I turned around, leaving behind that face frozen in shock. Attorney Zhu, I advise you to go back and dig through your files and take a good look at how the little brother who begged you to believe him 3 years ago died a slow death. The person I am today doesn't need your diagnosis and even less your salvation. My second sister stood frozen right there, desperately gripping her briefcase, her knuckles white from the pressure. She wanted to fire back. She wanted to break me with an even more ruthless logic. But she realized that I was no longer playing her game. I had become a block of ice, devoid of any warmth. No matter what words she used to get through to me, she only reaped an even more piercing chill. Zhao Ting. Stop right now! Zhu Jinju screamed behind me. I didn't slow down. The doctor said that moving away from sources of noise pollution was the best way to keep a clear mind. With my canvas bag in hand, I disappeared into the reflection of the revolving doors of the zoo group. But I didn't leave the zoo group building. I turned back around to take the service elevator on the side of the ground floor. I pressed the button for the 18th floor. That's where the finance department is located. It's also where I did my internship 3 years ago. My offboarding paperwork was never actually finalized. I left a personal notebook there. The doctor told me that taking back what belongs to me is the first step to rebuilding my personal boundaries. When the elevator doors opened, the hallway on the 18th floor was chaotic. In the largest meeting room, the one made completely of glass, it was packed. The group's directors were there, along with the external Shenji team and a few grim-looking suppliers. Zhao Jinju was sitting in the seat of honor, massaging her temples. My second sister hadn't come up with me. She must still be downstairs, trying to recover from her nervous breakdown. And Zhu Ming was standing right next to Zhao Jinju holding a report, putting on his usual docile savior of the day act. I walked up to the entrance of the room and pushed open the glass door, without making much noise. But everyone stopped arguing and turned toward me as one. When Zhu Jinju saw me, her face instantly darkened. What do you think you're doing here? Is security dead or what? She was about to call someone to kick me out when one of the big suppliers across from her slammed his fist on the table. Madame, now your family drama is none of our business. We are here today to get our money. This 100 million deficit from 3 years ago. You guys are still unable to account for it. Because of that, the books are still unbalanced. We can't justify anything to our superiors. The moment that 100 million figure was mentioned, the atmosphere in the room turned ice cold. 3 years ago, it was this exact same sum of 100 million vanishing out of thin air that signed my death warrant and sent me to the reform school. Back then, I was an intern in the finance department. Zhao Ming was there too. And the investigation ultimately concluded that it was my user ID, which had logged into the system to transfer the money, and the money landed in an offshore shell account. I had absolutely no way to defend myself. At that exact moment, Zhu Ming turned toward me, a calculating glint flashing across his eyes, before he immediately put on a deeply distressed look. Mr. Zhang, you know the story behind this debt well? Zhao Ming sighed, looking at the supplier. His voice was neither too loud nor too low, just enough for the entire room to hear it. Back then, it was my elder brother, meaning Zhu Ting, here present. He was young, clueless, and had fallen into severe addictions. He was the one who embezzled those funds. My big sister already chose justice over family by sending him to a reform school. He just got out today. He is a bit emotionally unstable. So, please, grant us an extension out of respect for the zoo. Family, we will eventually balance these books. His little speech was perfectly orchestrated. Not only did it calm the supplier down, but also, in front of everyone, it made me definitively take the fall for this past scandal. He even gave himself the luxury of explaining why I was present here today. Because I was nothing but a miserable criminal. Just recently released, the director's gazes landing on me were immediately loaded with contempt. If this had happened 3 years ago, facing such accusations in public, I would have immediately burst into tears. I would have thrown myself at Zhu Ming. I would have grabbed him by the collar to scream at him for spitting such venom. I would have stammered while swearing in front of everyone that I had never touched that validation system, and they would have instantly slapped the label of compulsive liar and mental patient. But now I just stood there near the door, even pulling up a chair on my way, and I quietly sat down on it. Mr. Zhu. I fixed my eyes on Zhou. I stared at Ming's jawline, and in an extremely calm voice I said, "What makes you think I'm going to react? The same way as before. Standing here crying and screaming about the injustice?" Zhao Ming froze for a second. He was used to seeing me fly off the handle, but not to seeing me this silent. "Big brother, stop making a scene," he said with a tense smile. "You were the one who signed back then. The cameras even caught you on tape entering the server room. Those are irrefutable proofs, and yet you're the one calling me crazy." I ignored his little acting routine and calmly stated, "In that case, I will follow the doctor's protocol. The doctor says that any lie made up from scratch inevitably leaves flaws." I placed my old faded canvas bag on the table and unzipped it. I pulled out an old USB drive that I gently slid to the center of the table. "Since all the audit experts are gathered here today, let's make a little wager." I looked up and my gaze swept across everyone present in the room. I demand that we extract right here and now the original payment chain for this 100 million transaction, the authorization chain, as well as the server's system logs. Zhao Jinju leaped up from her seat. Zhao Ting, do you plan on bringing shame upon us for much longer? This case has been closed for years. It's the Zhu family that closed the case in its own way. I looked her straight in the eye, my voice soft but absolute. I am not here to justify myself. You only justify yourself to people who matter. So what I want today is for us to settle our scores on the spot. I pointed my finger at the USB drive. 3 years ago, I didn't have the access rights to verify it, but during those 3 years, I learned to read code. Zhao Ming claims that I was the one who signed, and that because this transfer required 2 digital keys. The first belongs to the chief financial officer, and the second, mine as the operator in charge. A deadly silence reigned in the room. You could have heard a pin drop. The professional instinct of the auditors had just been piqued. They were all staring at me, and as for me, I was staring at Zhu Ming. Beads of sweat were already starting to break out on his forehead. But the system logs never lie. The exact time of that funds transfer was 2:14 in the morning. All you have to do is check the IP address used to log in with those 2 keys at that exact moment, and you will discover a fascinating detail. My voice was very soft, as if I were telling a bedtime story. Both keys were activated from the exact same computer, and the router's MAC address linked to that IP address doesn't belong to the company's server room. It matches the private apartment under Zhu Ming's name. Barely had I uttered those words when the room erupted. Several external auditors immediately opened their laptops, their fingers frantically typing on the keyboards. If what I am saying is true, it means that back then, someone was sitting comfortably in his apartment and forged at the exact same time the director's key and mine to validate this transaction. The face of Zhao Ming turned a deathly pale. He stared at the table in terror, his lips trembling. You're talking nonsense. This is defamation? Defamation. All it takes is a check to be absolutely sure. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my hands over my knees. The doctor says that the truth isn't a matter of feelings, but of factual evidence. 3 minutes later, the head of the audit team looked up and stared at Zhu Jinju with an extremely grave expression. Madam Zhu, what Mr. Zhu Ting says is correct. The sealed archives of the system clearly indicate that the IP address back then did absolutely not originate from the company. According to the ISP logs, it indeed belongs to the apartment of young master Zhao Ming. The air seemed to have been brutally sucked out of the room. Every single gaze was instantly diverted away from me to lock right onto Zhu Ming. Zhao Ming's legs gave out, and he collapsed into his chair. His precious victim mask, his perfect lies, everything shattered into pieces facing the cold hard numbers. Big sister, that's a lie, it wasn't me. Someone must have hacked my network. He tugged at Zhu Jinju's sleeve, completely panicking. Zhao Jinju remained frozen. She stared at the data on the audit computer. Then she looked at Zhao Ming, whose face was covered in cold sweat. And finally, she laid her eyes on me. In her gaze, there was absolute shock and a hint of terror finally rising to the surface. She had suddenly just realized that 3 years ago, she herself had sent her own innocent brother into that soul-devouring hell, that she had destroyed my life. A deadly silence filled the meeting room. Zhao Jinju's body was trembling. Slightly, she was gritting her teeth with all her might, and incredibly, her eyes welled up with tears. Logically speaking, a normal person would have apologized to me right then and there. She should have hugged me, cried her eyes out, and begged for my forgiveness. But this is Zhu Jinju, the leader of the Zhu family, the one who values nothing more than to appearances and results than to her own life. And despite all that, Zhao Jinju took a deep breath, forcing her haughty attitude back on, even though her voice was trembling. Even if you weren't the one who transferred that money, did you really have to make a scene in front of all these strangers today? Do you have any idea of the disastrous consequences on the Zhu family's reputation? Even if you suffered an injustice, couldn't you talk to me about it in private so you won't be satisfied until I've completely lost face? Is that it? She hadn't changed at all. No matter the truth, as long as it harmed her interests, then it was my fault. Listening to her twisted logic, I felt nothing, not the slightest emotion. I stood up, took the USB drive off the table and put it away in my canvas bag. Then I walked up to her. She expected me to scream about the injustice, to explode with rage, but I simply threw this line at her. Madam Director Zhu, my voice was colder and more polite than usual. What you owe me isn't an apology, it's to face the consequences. And today is only the beginning. From now on, you are no longer my family. I slung my bag over my shoulder and headed toward the exit. Without turning back, I pushed open the glass door. Behind me, I heard the sound of Zhao Jinju collapsing heavily into her chair, as well as the indignant whispers of the board members. None of that was my business anymore. Arriving in front of the elevator, I pulled out my old phone and opened my notes. Observation log day 8. The information gap has been destroyed. Zhao Ming has lost their trust, the central pillar. The target Zhu Jinju shows a cognitive collapse, but she refuses to admit her wrongs. The doctor said it. Those who deny their mistakes will face rules and much more severe punishments. I looked at the screen and typed one last line. Punishment protocol initiated. When I stepped outside the company doors, night had already fallen. I stood on the sidewalk, watching the endless flow of cars, my mind in a state of absolute calm. That scene from earlier, I've been planning it for 3 years. From my very first day of lockdown, I started gathering evidence, dissecting every single flaw in Zhu Ming. I knew he would inevitably leave traces because greedy people can never stop themselves from cheating. I waited for this day for 3 long years, and today I finally made it happen. But to be completely honest, I didn't feel the relief I was hoping for. I thought that the moment the truth came out, I'd burst out laughing, that I'd be on cloud 9, that I'd finally feel this massive weight lifted off me. But now that it's done, I don't feel anything at all. It's just like crossing a task off a to-do list, nothing more. The phone vibrated. It was a message from that number. Well played. I looked at those words, yeah. The corners of my mouth twitched. It was some sort of smile. Yeah, I did well, but what's next? Yeah. What am I supposed to do now? I have no idea. The doctor said that after settling scores, it's a fresh start. But I can't even imagine what a fresh start looks like. Whatever, I won't think about it anymore. I'll just head home first. End of day 8 of the observation log. Mission completion rate, 80%, emotional fluctuation 5. When I returned to the Zhu family villa, it was almost pitch black. The moment I walked through the door, I caught a scent I hadn't smelled in a very long time. It was sweet and sour mandarin fish. The year I turned 8, when the Zhu family had just found me, I was so small and completely dark-skinned from malnutrition. Today, my mother had prepared this dish for me with her own hands. Back then, she told me, Zhu Ting, from now on, this is your home. Mom is going to make up for everything she owes you. And I actually believed her. In the end, what she made up for was 3 years of hell and darkness and countless, you really disappoint, Mom. Yeah, Zhu Ting, yeah, you're back. My mother came running out of the kitchen, wearing her apron. She wore that flattering and incredibly cautious smile. My third sister, Zhu Yue, was also sitting on the couch holding several shopping bags from major luxury brands. Zhou Ting, yeah, come look quickly. Your big sister bought you new clothes. There's also a laptop from your favorite brand from before. Zhu Yue walked over and tried to grab my arm. I turned to dodge her, a very subtle movement, but it was as if it had dug a chasm between us. Madame Zhu, Miss Zhu. I looked at them in a perfectly calm tone, 3 without the slightest emotion. The doctor said that doing too much for no reason is usually part of a compensation psychology. Your current behavior disrupts my established order. My mother's smile froze on her face. Her eyes turned red in an instant. Mom? Zhao Ting, Mom knows she was wrong. This afternoon, Jinju came back from the company and explained everything. That 100 million... It really wasn't you who took it. It was Xiaoming. She was sobbing, wanting to step forward to tightly hug me. Mom didn't have an easy life either. These past few years, Mom has always wanted to make it up to you. Give Mom a chance, okay? Yeah, I looked at her. Her tears were genuine. Yeah, her guilt seemed genuine too. But my heart was like a frozen lake. There wasn't the slightest ripple on the surface. I walked over to the dining table, staring at that plate of mandarin fish that was still steaming. 3 years ago, when Zhu Ming said that I had stolen money, you slapped me in public. You said that the Zhu family wouldn't harbor that kind of thief. 2 years ago, when I was over there, because I refused to admit that I was sick, they put me in solitary confinement. I wrote to you, begging you to come get me. You replied, telling me to get proper rehabilitation and to stop bringing shame to the family. 1 year ago, because I refused to take my meds, I underwent electroshock therapy and fell into a coma for 3 days. Director Zhu came to see me. You tasked her with giving me a message, saying that if I was really obedient, the Zhu family would always keep a place for me. With every single sentence I spoke, my mother's face grew a bit paler. By the end, she couldn't even stand up anymore. She held onto the table, bursting into tears. Stop. Zhao Ting, I beg you don't say another word. I'm going to say it. Thank you. I pulled out a chair and sat down on it. With elegant movements, I pulled out my phone and opened a document. The doctor said that familial affection isn't just about blood relations. Everything is paid for through actions. Here is my ledger for these past 3 years. I slid my phone to the middle of the table. 3 years of illegal confinement, 1,095 days in total. 34 physical injuries ranging from minor to severe. My right to education, which was stolen from me. My right to have a social life, and my human dignity, all of it converted into numbers. I looked up at them, my gaze crystal clear, without the slightest emotion, but with a blood-curdling coldness. And now, you think that with a simple meal, some clothes, and vague overdue apologies, you can just wipe the slate clean. What makes you think that I still need your love? Zhao Yiwei stared at the notes on the phone, this suffering that I had recorded word for word. She suddenly slammed her hand over her mouth and ran toward the bathroom. The sounds of retching echoed out. My mother collapsed to the floor. She clutched at my pants while howling in agony. It's all my fault. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Mom didn't want to send you there back then. It's Jinju, who told me that this place could cure your mythomania and Xiaoming. He told me that he had seen you hanging out with thugs at school. Mom didn't know what to do anymore. Listen to mom. I just wanted our family to be a bit more stable. Stable. I repeated that word, an ironic smile forming on my lips. So, for your stability, you treated me like a toxic asset and liquidated me. I leaned down to look her straight in the eye, with an unprecedented, icy politeness. Madame Zoe, I ask you to admit one thing from your own mouth. 3 years ago, when you signed the consent form to send me to that reform school, didn't you say to yourself that if I disappeared, the Zhu family could go right back to its little illusion of a perfect family? No. My mother opened her mouth, her face flooded with tears, incapable of uttering a single word. The terror in her eyes gave me the answer. That's it. Back then, they also saw me as a stain that was ruining their so perfect family. No need for explanations. You only explain yourself to people who matter. I stood up and grabbed my canvas bag. Leave that fish dish for Zhu Ming. I think he really needs a little family warmth right now. Leaving all of that behind me, I headed toward the stairs. Behind me, my mother screamed my name while crying, but I didn't turn back. The doctor said that when you cut short your own needs, you cut off the source of all suffering. Back in my room, I sat in the dark. The crying still echoed from downstairs. It was just the price to pay for their guilt. I pulled out my old phone and opened my notes. Observation report day 9. The emotional ledger has been revealed. The enemy's defenses have collapsed. The target, Madame Zhu, is consumed by extreme guilt. But the doctor said that this kind of remorse only appears when the truth comes to light. If the truth had remained buried, they would all continue to see me as the bad boy. I looked out the window. The streetlights in the Zhu family garden had just turned on, illuminating the neatly trimmed flower beds. This was Zhu Ming's favorite view. I coldly typed one last line. Affection is dead. The settling of scores continues. Just as I was getting ready to rest, my phone suddenly vibrated. It was a text from an unknown number. The message contained only a short sentence. Mr. Zhao, it really looks like you've learned to become an excellent auditor. Greetings. I am delighted by it. My hand tightened around the phone. It was him, that famous doctor from the reform school, the one who had broken me with his own hands before remodeling me to make me what I am today. I stared at his words for a long moment. To be frank, I had absolutely no idea how to reply. He had just congratulated me. Greetings. Today, I should have been thrilled about it. But deep down, I didn't feel the slightest ounce of joy, and it was at that exact moment that Zhu Ming's piercing shriek echoed downstairs, followed by the thud of something heavy crashing to the floor. It looks like my mother's overdue guilt finally caught up with Zhu Ming. But I know that Zhu Ming isn't going to take this lying down. He will definitely use public opinion to launch one last counterattack. End of day 9 of observation. 2. Increase in external interference. 3. Emotional fluctuation level 5. The next morning, Zhao Ming's counterattack arrived faster than I thought, and way more pathetic than I imagined. Half an hour ago, several local anonymous forums and short video platforms exploded simultaneously, with headlines, each more sensational than the last. The biological son, returning to his rich family, turns into a demon. He violently beats the adopted son and drives his own mother insane. In the video, the footage is super shaky. It shows my mother collapsed on the floor, crying her eyes out, the whole thing put in slow motion with highly dramatic background music. And then there's Zhu Ming's face, captured in profile by the camera. Half of his face is red, and swollen, his gaze filled with terror and distress. In the comments section, it's collective hysteria. 3 years in a reform school isn't enough for this kind of trash. He should be locked up for life. The Zhu family really raised an ungrateful monster. Biological son or not, it changes nothing. When you're rotten to the core, you're hopeless. I feel so bad for little Ming. He did so much for the Zhou family these past 3 years, and this psycho who comes back just wants to steal the inheritance. I look at these words. They are like a meaningless gust of wind that slides right over me without ever reaching me. The doctor said that public opinion is a cheap bullet. It only hurts those who actually care about their reputation. But as for me, I no longer have a reputation. I only have evidence. My bedroom door flies open with a violent kick. Zhu Jinju storms in with heavy steps, gripping a digital tablet in her hand. Her face is contorted with rage, the veins on her forehead pulsing. Zhu Ting, is this what you wanted? She violently throws the tablet onto my lap and points at the trending topics on the screen. The board of directors' phone won't stop ringing. Every single one of our partners is asking if the Zhu family has spawned a raving lunatic. You have completely destroyed the company's image. You need to make a public apology right now to achieve damage control. She stares at me with that same arrogant tone of a boss, even though she knows perfectly well that I was wrongfully accused 3 years ago. But in her eyes, the honor of the Zhu family will always come before my innocence. I take the tablet and scroll through the screen with a bored expression. Director Zhu, I look up at her, my gaze as calm as stagnant water. Do you want me to be reasonable, or do you want me to let myself be trampled on forever? Zhao Jinju stands frozen. She did not expect me to use that exact same phrase, repeated on loop these past 2 days, to counter her. I order you to go apologize. It's for the greater good of the family. She yells, the greater good is your problem. I stand up and place the tablet on the desk. As for me, I only care about my own settling of scores. I pull out the old phone containing the evidence and plug it into the computer. The doctor says that lying is wrong, that defaming is wrong. Since Zhou Ming loves destroying people via the court of public opinion so much, I'm going to teach him what a chain of irrefutable evidence actually is. My fingers type at lightning speed on the keyboard. The first video I publish is the recording from the living room the other night. The entire scene, 3 unedited, 4 without music. It clearly shows how Zhu Ming provoked me, how he insulted me, and how he faked his fall just before I slapped him. The second file is the police intervention report. It's written in black and white that Zhu Ting was the one who reported the incident. The Zhu family is suspected of unlawful confinement. And the third most fatal point is the screenshots of the company's system logs dating back to 3 years ago, as well as a copy of the draft apology email that my second sister, Zhao Ruxiao, just sent me. She's probably trying to patch things up, but she doesn't know that every single word she wrote to me will become a weapon in my hands. Send. I shut down the computer and look at the screen plunge into darkness. You are completely insane. Zhao Jinju stares at me after what I just did, her voice trembling. You are going to completely destroy the Zhu family. By doing this, no, I'm not the one destroying the Zhu family. I grab my bag, ready to leave. No, I already told you, you are no longer my family. No. I walk toward the door, turn around and look her straight in the eye. Director Zhu, I cannot manage this damage control the way you want. All I can offer you are the consequences for messing with me. I walk out of the room. In the dim light of the stairwell, Zhao Ming is standing there. He is staring at his phone, and his expression changes from smugness to sheer terror, finally contorting into a visceral rage. Zhu Ting, do you really think you've won? He grits his teeth and lunges at me to rip my bag away. I don't back down. I simply extend my arm and grab his throat with icy precision. I put all my strength into it. He won't die from it. The doctor told me that physical violence is bad, so I lock my gaze onto his, my voice cold as ice. Then I'm going to teach you once again what the word respect means. I violently slam him against the wall. What you owe me, a simple apology won't be enough to wipe it away. Now it's your turn to suffer the wrath of public opinion. Downstairs, my mother's crying echoes once again, but this time no one is going to comfort her, because everyone is too busy staring at their phones, watching the prestigious facade of the Zhu family get ripped to shreds by my own hands. I walk through the gates of the residence. The night wind is freezing. Suddenly my phone screen lights up. It's a message from that unknown number. Good job, but it's still not radical enough. I put my phone away and look at my slightly too thin silhouette under the streetlight. Yeah, it's true, it's not enough. The doctor says that loving oneself is the golden rule, and the best way to love yourself is to make sure everyone who did me wrong loses the power to hurt me forever. Observation log day 10. The public opinion war has flipped. The reputation of the Zhu family is ruined. The target Zhu Ming has been totally exposed. The Zhu family is trying to guilt trip me with blood relations, but I no longer feel the slightest affection for them. The doctor says it's a necessary step toward freedom. The next morning, the atmosphere in the Zhu villa is heavy, almost macabre. Zhao Jinju didn't go to the office. My second and my third sister are both here. Even my father, who usually lives as a recluse, is seated at the place of honor in the living room. He has a dark, terrifying expression on his face. Zhu Ting, come here. My father's voice echoes, heavy with a crushing authority that brooks no argument. I walk to the middle of the living room. Good morning, Mr. Zhu. I address him politely. My father furrows his brow deeply. What did you just call me? The doctor said that how we address someone should reflect the actual nature of our relationship. I look at him calmly. As of today, I'm no longer part of this family. You ungrateful wretch, he screams, slamming his fist violently on the table as he stands up. At that exact moment, a shriek from Zhu Ming echoes from upstairs. He comes running down the stairs, stumbling a stack of documents in his hand, his face pale and every limb trembling. Dad, it's a disaster. He scatters the files on the table, his fingers shaking. The project department just called me. They say that the bidding info for our main project got leaked. The competing company submitted a base price, exactly identical to ours. Zhao Jinju's gaze instantly turns sharp. What? But that's for the Zhu Group. It's our biggest project of the year, a $10 billion project. Zhao Ming collapses onto the couch, his face buried in his hands, bursting into tears. My personal seal that was in the safe, and the electronic access codes that big sister entrusted to me, it's all gone. Every single gaze locks instantly onto me like daggers. Zhou Ting, you walked past my room last night. Zhao Ming looked up at me, his eyes filled with terror. When I got up last night, I saw you walk past my door. You were holding something in your hands. You're talking absolute nonsense. The third sister, Zhu Yue, instinctively shouted, but her voice was seriously lacking confidence. Zhao Jinju stepped toward me and the last ounce of guilt in her eyes completely evaporated. You dared to sell the company's secrets. She approached me, her voice icy. Ya Zhuting, do you really want to destroy our family just to feel satisfied? No, my mother stood up in turn, her gaze filled with despair. Ya Zhuting, how could you do such a thing? This is your father's entire life's work. And here it was again, the exact same usual blame. They didn't even need any proof. All it took was Zhu Ming whining for me to automatically be the guilty one. They say that I am insane. I looked at Zhu Jinju and suddenly smiled. In a very soft voice, I said, then I am going to follow the doctor's treatment. I turned toward Zhu Ming, using a tone as warm as a casual greeting. Mr. Zhou, yeah, you say you saw me enter your room, yeah. Zhao Ming gritted his teeth and nodded his head. Yes, last night at 2 a.m., yeah. And you say that the seal and the codes disappeared. Is that right? Yeah. The company's survival is at stake. I nodded my head. From my canvas bag, I pulled out that old, completely worn out cell phone. The doctor said that one must not lie, that one must not wrongfully accuse. I brought up a surveillance video and streamed it directly onto the living room television. Director Zhu, Mr. Zhu, you should know that a crazy person like me has a certain habit, the habit of being extremely paranoid toward those around her. On the screen, the small hallway outside my room appeared very clearly. At 2 a.m., the door to my room hadn't moved a single millimeter. On the other hand, at 3 a.m., a silhouette in silk pajamas stealthily stepped out of Zhu Ming's room. The person was holding a black box and tossed it directly into the trash chute at the end of the hallway. It was Zhu Ming. A deadly silence fell over the living room. Zhao Ming's crying stopped dead. He froze on the couch, his face turning from white to green. This is edited. You crazy psycho, you're trying to frame me. He screamed, lunging toward the television. I didn't stop him. I simply played an audio recording. Zhao Ming's muffled voice could be heard inside. It was a conversation between him and a stranger. I got rid of the gear. I'm emailing you the bid. Transfer the rest of the money to the offshore account. This time, that idiot, Zhao Ting, is going to be our scapegoat. She won't recover from this. The audio was absolutely crystal clear. Even Zhao Ming's heavy breathing, betraying his excitement, was perfectly audible. I slowly unclenched my fists, which had been tight until now. My gaze, initially furious, emptied of all emotion. Zhao Jinju stared at the screen. She swayed on her feet, almost collapsing. My second sister Zhu Ruxiao wanted to defend him, but she shut up like a strangled duck, unable to make a single sound. Who do you take me for? Who do you take me for? You think I stayed the exact same, whining on the spot and crying about injustice? I locked onto Zhu Ming. My gaze didn't flinch anymore. I stared at him with the same contempt as a piece of pure trash. The doctor said it, right and wrong aren't a matter of feelings. It's actions and evidence. Mr. Zhu, when you leaked our projects to the competitor, you forgot to check the voice recorder in your office. Oh, by the way, I was the one who left it there on purpose. I put away my phone, observing all these people who had just been hit by the slap of truth, right in their faces. Madam Director Zhu, Mr. Zhu, Madam Zhou. I addressed them all one by one, in a tone more polite and freezing than ever. The truth is out. Every single sentence you just used to accuse me a moment ago demands a reckoning. My mother suddenly lunged toward me to grab my hand. Zhu Ting, Mom was wrong. He completely manipulated me. I'm kicking him out onto the streets right now. I pushed her hand away. What you owe me isn't an apology. It's to face the consequences today. I looked at this woman, my mother, who once swore to love me, but who abandoned me every single time at critical moments. 3 years ago, facing the truth, you chose to sacrifice me to keep the peace in the family. And today, facing the truth, your first instinct is still to sweep it under the rug. I glanced at my father, his hand ready to call the public relations department. He still wanted to hush up the scandal to save the Zhu family's honor, to save that rotten trash Zhu Ming, just to preserve his perfect little public image. From this day on, as far as I'm concerned, you are no longer my family. I grabbed my bag and headed toward the exit. Last night, I sent everything anonymously to the investors and regulatory authorities. The penalties and the scandal that the Zhu family is about to suffer are exactly what you deserve. Zhou Ting, stop right there. My father roared behind me. I stopped and turned back. Do you want me to be reasonable, or do you just hope that I'll continue to let myself be crushed in silence? I let out coldly before pushing open the heavy door of the Zhu estate. Outside, the wind was blowing hard. My phone vibrated. A short text: the mask has fallen. You can finally amputate this rotten flesh. I'm waiting for you at the gate. I looked at the streetlights in the distance. The doctor said that loving oneself was rule number 1. And today, I finally understood that. Observation log day 11. Counterattack against Zhu Ming's trap. All cards are on the table. The Zhu family tried to bury the truth again. Total failure. Emotional system completely deactivated. The doctor told me, well played. In the massive living room of the Zhu estate, my father sat in the place of honor on the couch. He slammed his cane violently against the floor, making a heavy muffled thud. He was waiting for Zhao Jinju to bring back the final audit report of the company. He was also waiting for Zhu Ming's so-called logical explanation. As for me, I sat sideways in an armchair, holding that old worn-out phone, slowly sliding my finger across the screen. The doctor said that when all the evidence leads to the same outcome, the truth is no longer a secret, but an irrevocable sentence. The front door flew open with a slam. Zhao Jinju burst inside, bringing in the freezing night cold. She tightly gripped a completely crumpled file in her hand, her eyes bloodshot. I stared at Zhu Ming, sitting on the other side, cuddling into the staring intensely at Zhu Ming, sitting on the other side, curling up, with his head down, his shoulders shaking with sobs. Big sister, let me explain. I was really framed. Zhao Ming's voice was muffled by his tears. It was always the same old act to farm. Pity. Zhu Jinju didn't say a single word. She threw the stack of files directly in his face, and the paper scattered all over the floor. On every single one of them, there were the official stamps of the bank and the police. Framed. Zhu Jinju's voice was trembling, betraying a total loss of control from extreme rage. Zhao Ming, this offshore account with 100 million, it's in your name. And that anonymous email used to frame Zhou Ting, the IP address it was sent from, is the one from the laptop in your office? Tell me, who could have gone inside your head to frame you, huh? Zhao Ming's crying stopped dead. He stared at the evidence on the floor, his face turning from flushed to white, finally taking on an almost corpse-like tint. My mother widened her eyes. She instinctively let go of Zhu Ming, whom she was holding in her arms. Xiaoming, is what Jinju saying true? My mother's voice was trembling terribly. My father stood up in a single bound. In 3 strides, he was right in front of Zhao Ming and raised his hand to slap him across the face. You little piece of trash, roared my father, his chest heaving violently. Our Zhu family raised you for 20 years, and you for a bit of cash. You destroyed my company with your own hands, and you even sent your brother to that kind of place. Zhao Ming's head snapped to the side from the blow, trickle of blood dripping from the corner of his lips. Suddenly, he dropped the act. He slowly raised his head, wiped the blood from his mouth, and let out a chilling, goosebump-inducing laugh. My brother, yeah. Zhao Ming stared at my father, his gaze venomous. What kind of brother is he supposed to be? Ever since he came back, do I even exist in your eyes anymore? I just wanted to secure my backup plan. Am I wrong for that? Yeah. My mother, seeing this face that had become completely foreign to her, swayed and collapsed onto the couch, bursting into tears. Call the police. My father closed his eyes, his voice sounding like it had aged 10 years all at once. Zhao Jinju turned her gaze toward me, her eyes filled with devastating guilt. Zhu Ting, I'm so sorry. Your big sister was completely blind. I'm the one who wronged you. She stepped toward me, wanting to take my hand. I pulled my hand back, dodging her touch. Director Zhu? I stared at her in a perfectly calm tone, without the slightest emotion. As they say, delayed justice only serves to ease the conscience of the guilty. Zhao Jinju's hand remained frozen in midair. I pulled several forms out of my bag that I had already printed and laid them out on the coffee table. Since the truth has finally come to light, let's settle the score one last time. I looked at all those people in tears in the room. Mr. Zhu, Madam Zhu, Director Zhu. I addressed them by their titles one by one. This 100 million case is Zhu Ming's doing. It's up to him to face the criminal consequences. But the decision to send me to that reform school 3 years ago, you were the ones who made it. I handed them a pen. I don't accept empty words. Apologizing costs nothing. I want every single one of you, regarding that decision from 3 years ago, which illegally deprived me of my freedom, to write a statement, sign it, and stamp it with your seal. Zhao Jinju stood there, completely stunned. What is the point of this? What for? The doctor said that only by freezing mistakes on paper can you feel the true pain. I looked at her calmly. You'd rather admit that Xiaoming is in the wrong than own up to your own acts of cruelty back then? Sign. Once you've signed, what you owe me will finally enter the compensation process. My father looked at this statement, his hands trembling, so much that he couldn't even hold the pen. Zhu Ting, do we really have to go this far? Yeah, we're still a family after all. I smiled slightly. Then I will apply the doctor's protocol. From this day on, I no longer have a family with the Zhu family. I only have debtors left. Zhao Jinju gritted her teeth and was the first to sign, her tears splashing onto the paper, smudging the ink. My father and my mother signed in turn. At the moment of signing, their movements were silent, as if they were draining the strength of an entire lifetime. I collected those signed statements and I carefully slid them into a plastic sleeve. Zhao Jinju looked at me, her voice choked with sobs. We have cleared everything up and we settled Zhu Ming's score. Can you stay, please? I grabbed my canvas bag and looked toward the main door. The night was already pitch black. The doctor said that once a gangrenous limb has been amputated, you must never try to sew it back on. I walked out of the Zhu family's grand living room without a single glance back. Behind me, there were the desperate wails of my mother, and Zhu Jinju repeating I'm sorry on loop. But in my heart, it was absolutely peaceful, truly very peaceful. My phone vibrated. That nameless number sent me a message. Did you get what you needed? I replied with a simple, yeah. From the other side of the screen, the reply came quickly. Perfect. Come back, Mr. Zhu. I stared at that text, and for the first time, a faint glimmer of emotion crossed my eyes. Observation log day 12. The truth has come out. Identity of the debtors confirmed. The members of the Zhu family have finally confessed to their crime, but they have lost my forgiveness forever. The doctor says that only after settling one's scores that one finds true freedom. The villa of the Zhu family has never been as well organized as it is today. Zhao Ming was taken away for questioning. That 5-person family photo with that extra Xiao Ming that sat right in the middle of the living room, I took it down with my own hands and I tossed it, frame and all, into the storage room. The members of the Zhao family formed for the first time a sort of united front, like a macabre shift, wishing to shed full light on the past and compensate for everything. In the dining room, the table was overflowing with dishes. Every single one of them had been prepared based on my meager memories from before I turned 8, when I lived with the Zhu family. My father was sitting in the place of honor, my mother on the side, and my 3 big sisters were lined up next to each other. They were all staring at me, their gaze overflowing with that sickening tenderness that makes you want to vomit. Zhu Ting, sweetie, this is your favorite dish, sweet and sour pork ribs. Mom made them herself. My mother placed a piece of meat into my bowl, her hand trembling slightly. Before Mom was completely lost, I let myself be blinded by that ungrateful wretch. From now on, I swear Mom is going to do everything to make it up to you. I stared at that piece of meat in my bowl. The doctor says that when someone starts using food to apologize, it proves that they are incapable of finding a more profound approach. I didn't touch my chopsticks, Madame Zhu. I gently pushed the bowl away, with a gesture as serene as if I were discarding a useless official document. The doctor says that eating food that's 3 years past its expiration date will poison you. An affection that is 3 years overdue is no better. My mother's smile froze, and tears suddenly gushed from her eyes. Zhu Ting, you still hold a grudge against Mom, don't you, yeah? Mom really understood her mistake. Madame Zhou, I don't hold a grudge against you. I looked at her with a tone of absolute politeness, but it was as if there were a thick sheet of bulletproof glass between us. Holding a grudge against someone requires a massive amount of emotional energy, and as for me, I no longer feel anything. Big sister Zhu Jinju suddenly spoke up, her voice raspy with that authoritative tone that brooked no argument. Zhu Ting, since the truth has come to light, I will have the company publish a press release immediately to restore your reputation. I have already given the order to transfer 5% of the founding shares of the Zhu Group to your name as compensation. She was looking at me with that gaze that seemed to say, look, I've made so many concessions. You should be satisfied with that. True invisible pressure. I stared at this big sister. 3 years ago, she was the one who right here slapped me with her own hands, saying that a thief of my kind didn't deserve to carry the Zhu name. Director Zhu. I cracked a smile, but my gaze remained icy. Do you want us to appeal to reason? Or do you expect me to just keep taking it in silence? Dao Jinju stood frozen, her face suddenly pale. Do you really think that with these shares you can buy back my 3 years of illegal confinement? Do you believe that a simple press release can fill the void left in my brain by the electroshock sessions? I pulled a bank card out of my bag and made it slide gently to the center of the table. Here is the cash, equivalent of everything you've given me these past few days. I will not explain myself. Explanations are for people who matter. Everything you are doing now is just to get me to come back, or just to ease your own conscience. This sentence sliced like a scalpel, flaying open in front of everyone. That layer of hypocrisy covering the Zhu family. The living room plunged into a dead silence. Slammed my glass down violently on the table with a crash, splashing alcohol all over the floor. Zhu Ting, what exactly are you after? My father roared, his eyes bloodshot. Yeah, Yao Ming is already ruined. Do you want to destroy us too? No, we are a family. Blood ties cannot be broken. 3 blood ties? What a convenient phrase. It's the chain that dragged me into the abyss 3 years ago, and it's also the hook with which they are trying to pull me back into my dungeon today. The doctor always said, right and wrong aren't feelings, they are behavioral evidence. I stood up, adjusting my shirt that was faded from many washings. The behavioral evidence shows that your actions during these 3 years amount to abuse, and what you are doing right now is just to give yourselves a clear conscience. My third sister, Zhao Yue, suddenly rushed toward me, opening her arms wide to hug me while crying her eyes out. Zhou Ting, I beg of you. Please no, don't be so cold. I'll take you sketching outdoors. I'll take you where you've always dreamed of going. Let's start over from scratch, okay? I stepped to the side, dodging her embrace with clinical precision. I kept my hands shoved in my pockets. Third sister. It was the absolute last time I would call her that. My voice as light as a draft of air. You just crossed my security perimeter. The doctor said that any contact against my will is called an assault. I stared at her hands frozen in midair. There was zero hatred in my eyes. Just a total and absolute indifference. What exactly makes you think that I still need you? Believe me, from this day on, you are no longer my family. There's nothing left between us but debts. I turned around and headed toward the stairs, each of my steps heavy and firm. Behind me, my mother's heartbreaking wails echoed, along with the heavy sighs, as well as the helpless screams of Zhu Jinju. All of that was nothing but noise. Back in my room, I closed the door and drew the heavy curtains. I pulled out that old phone, opened my notes, and typed the very last sentence of the day. Observation log day 13. Conclusion of the test on emotional noise overload. They are trying to erase their guilt by repairing our relationship. Repair denied. Relationship terminated. I started packing my bags. I didn't have much, just this old canvas bag. The doctor said that loving oneself was rule number one. And within my own rules, there isn't the slightest room for the Zhu family. I grabbed my bag and took one last look at this room that reeked of rot. The Zhu family thought that by getting rid of Zhu Ming, everything would go back to how it was 3 years ago. They didn't know it, but the Zhu Ting of 3 years ago, the one who just wanted to be loved, has long been dead on that freezing electroshock bed. As I walked down the stairs, the entire Zhou family was still frozen in the dining room. I didn't say a word to them. 3 without any regrets. I pushed open that grand majestic door. Outside, the night was cool. With my old faded canvas bag in hand, I walked up to the entrance of the Zhu estate. It was the absolute last time I would ever stand here. 3 years ago, I was dragged out by force. A few days ago, I was begged to come back. But today, I'm the one choosing to leave. Zhu Ting. A heavy thud echoed behind me, followed by the desperate screams of my barefoot mother. She collapsed onto her knees directly on the marble floor, firmly clutching my pants. Mom is begging you, don't leave. I'll give you my own life if I have to. Everything that happened is my fault. I should have never believed that ungrateful brat. I'm ready to die right this second. As long as you stay. I looked down at her hands, usually so well maintained, but whose knuckles were turning white from the strength of her grip. 3 years ago, these exact same hands had squeezed with just as much force, except back then, it was to push me away, while screaming at me to never come back and disgrace the Zhu family. Madam Zhu? I addressed her softly, my voice perfectly calm. The doctor says that breaking down emotionally is a sign of incompetence. Getting down on your knees won't change the fact that this agreement you signed 3 years ago has been in effect for over 1,000 days. And during those 1,000 days, my home was never again with the Zhu family. She raised her head, her face drenched in tears, her eyes filled with panic and pleas. No, you carry the Zhu name. You are my own flesh and blood. You are part of this family. Blood ties are indestructible, Zhu Ting. Are you really going to throw everything away just for the words of some so-called doctor? Are you really going to abandon us? My third sister, Zhu Yue, stood to the side, shaking from her sobs. She reached out her hand to grab my sleeve, then violently pulled it back, remembering what I had just said. Zhao Ting, I beg of you, we'll do another DNA test. We'll invite the entire city. We'll announce to everyone that you are the one and only heir to the Zhu family. We're going to make it up to you. We'll give you nothing but the best. Longtit. My father had been standing in the shadows mute. Then he stepped forward. His voice was deep, carrying a comforting, yet completely condescending tone. Zhu Ting, I know you were throwing a tantrum, and I also know that you hold a grudge. Shares cars, villas, whatever you want. Zhao Jianan, I'm offering you all of it this very day, thanks. So stop with this nonsense about cutting ties. The door of the Zhu family will always be wide open to you. After all, it's my blood running through your veins. I looked at him. I looked at this father who, up until this exact moment, still thought that money and blood ties could fix everything. Mr. Zhu, I began, my gaze still just as clear, but as if I were staring at a dead object without the slightest trace of life. What exactly makes you think that I still need your trust? What makes you think that for this blood-stained money, I'm going to lock myself back up in this cage? I pulled out a craft paper envelope that I had on me, and I placed it on the entryway cabinet right next to them. This is a declaration of severance of our ties, as well as a request for removal from the family registry. I have already filed a request to establish my own independent household. From now on, I no longer carry the Zhu name. I am only myself. The doctor said that loving oneself was rule number 1, and staying here would force me to break that rule. My second sister, Zhu Ruxiao, initially wanted to use legal arguments to hold me back. But upon seeing that envelope, she, the hotshot lawyer, who had never shown the slightest weakness in court, collapsed flat onto the couch. Are you really going as far as striking your name from our family? She looked at me, looking completely devastated. Zhu Ting, legally you cannot cut blood ties. Except causing us pain, what is the point? What is the point? I shot back with a slight smile. I'm not trying to make a point about anything. I just wanted to stop, to put an end to these 3 long years of torture. My eldest sister, Bao Jinju, pushed the door open and rushed inside. She was holding in her hand an agreement that she had just signed, giving up control of the group. Her eyes were red and her voice unrecognizable, was completely raspy. Zhu Ting, look, I already had that Zhu Ming sent to the police station. I can even hand over the entire group to you. Don't you hate me? Stay here, please. Yeah, make me suffer through whatever you want, but for pity's sake, don't leave. The breakdown in her eyes was very real. Yeah, her remorse was just as real, but to me, it was nothing more than one of those scenes of self-pity that the Zhu family specialized in. Director Zhu. I looked at her, articulating each word with an icy gentleness. I don't hate you. Hate is reserved for people who matter to us, and I am completely indifferent to what you think. I gently freed myself from my mother's grip, a movement of absolute smoothness, without the slightest hesitation. For my mother, it was as if the last rope had just snapped. She collapsed, completely fainted. The Zhou family suddenly sank into absolute chaos. My father's roars of rage, my third sister's tearful screams, my second sister's muffled sobs. It was the veneer of respectability that the Zhu family had maintained for decades that I had just shattered into pieces. I walked to the front door. The night breeze was a bit cool, and it felt pleasant on my face. I stopped for a moment with my back turned to them. I am going to meet someone. Don't look for me. The doctor said it, my new life begins today. I walked past the grand gate. Behind me, that sumptuous and glittering villa looked like an isolated tomb under the spotlight, and those living inside were none other than the exact same people who had sold me out with their own hands 3 years ago. Right now, the hour of truth has struck, but the Zhu Ting of the past is absolutely gone forever. I pulled out my phone, the screen lighting up in the darkness. There was only one message, with no saved sender name. See you at the entrance. I took a deep breath, then walked toward that silhouette, waiting for me under the streetlight. My steps were so light, as if I had never suffered at all. At the old train station on the outskirts of the city, I tightly held my faded canvas bag, standing under the streetlight. No one from the Zhu family had followed me. The final severance letter I left them will be enough to keep Zhu Ruxiao busy for over 2 weeks, and that will leave them plenty of time night after night to savor the bitterness of being betrayed by all. The doctor used to say that after settling your scores, you must absolutely never look back at the fire, because the screams in the flames are only there to lure you in and burn you right along with them. A black SUV pulled up silently in front of me. The window rolled down, revealing a face of absolute calm. With an almost sickly paleness, he looked like an MC. He wore thin gold-rimmed golden glasses. His hair was slicked back in a very strict fashion. His gaze landing on me wasn't that of an old friend happy to see me again. It felt as if he were examining the perfection of an experimental data point. You are 3 minutes and 14 seconds late, he let out, his voice as clinical as a research paper, precise and freezing. That little family. Drama from the Zhu family. At the moment of the goodbyes wasted way too much of your vital energy. I opened the car door and sat in the front seat. The air conditioning was blasting. The cold was almost biting, but I loved that sensation. Compared to that suffocating warmth of the Zhu family, this extreme cold gave me a sense of security. They discovered the truth. I stared at the road, plunged into the pitch-black night, speaking in a perfectly neutral tone. Zhu Ming was placed in pretrial detention. My mother got down on her knees to beg me. Zhao Jinju even wanted to hand over the Zhu group to me on a silver platter. Zhao Yiwei cried until her eyes swelled up. I paused for a brief moment. I felt Wei Yuru's gaze lingering on my whitened knuckles, clutching my bag. But I didn't have the slightest desire to laugh, and it gave me absolutely zero satisfaction. I just found it completely uninteresting. Wei Yuru started the car, the engine roaring with a dull thud. Regrets is a luxury reserved for executioners. It has absolutely nothing to do with the victims. He looked straight ahead, his slender hands tapping the steering wheel in rhythm. 4. Zhao Ting, get this straight through your head. If they are suffering today, it's solely because they lost their grip on you, and not at all because they suddenly found a conscience. 5. If they hadn't sent you to that reform school, you would have never been able to cut ties so radically. 6 inches? I sank back into the seat with my eyes closed. 3 years ago, Wei Yuru was suspended from his duties for severe ethical violations. He wasn't committed by mistake. He deliberately entered that perverse and sadistic reform system for one single purpose: to find the perfect observation specimen. And as for me, desperate and abandoned by everyone, I became his one and only prey. He taught me how to deactivate my own emotions. He taught me how to wield relentless logic to dissect. Goodbyes wasted way too much of your vital energy. I opened the car door and sat in the front seat. The air conditioning was blasting. The cold was almost biting. But I loved that sensation. Compared to that suffocating warmth of the Zhu family, this extreme cold gave me a sense of security. They discovered the truth. I stared at the road, plunged into the pitch-black night, speaking in a perfectly neutral tone. Zhu Ming was placed in pretrial detention. My mother got down on her knees to beg me. Zhao Jinju even wanted to hand over the Zhou group to me on a silver platter. Zhao Yiwei cried until her eyes swelled up. I paused for a brief moment. I felt Wei Yuru's gaze lingering on my whitened knuckles, clutching my bag. But I didn't have the slightest desire to laugh, and it gave me absolutely zero satisfaction. I just found it completely uninteresting. Wei Yuru started the car, the engine roaring with a dull thud. Regret is a luxury reserved for executioners. It has absolutely nothing to do with the victims. He looked straight ahead, his slender hands tapping the steering wheel in rhythm. 4. Zhu Ting, get this straight through your head. If they are suffering today, solely because they lost their grip on you, and not at all because they suddenly found a conscience. 5. If they hadn't sent you to that reform school, you would have never been able to cut ties so radically. 6 inches. I sank back into the seat with my eyes closed. 3 years ago, Wei Yuru was suspended from his duties for severe ethical violations. He wasn't committed by mistake. He deliberately entered that perverse and sadistic reform system for one single purpose: to find the perfect observation specimen. And as for me, desperate and abandoned by everyone, I became his one and only prey. He taught me how to deactivate my own emotions. He taught me how to wield relentless logic in the direction of the Zhu family estate. It was completely illuminated. My father must have been in his office, staring at that notification letter, unable to sleep a wink all night. Right now, my mother was surely clutching my old childhood clothes close to her, weeping until the early morning. As for Zhu Jinju, she had gained control over the entire group. But she would never get back that little brother who used to smile at her so naively. They won all their battles, but they lost the only person who just wanted to be loved by them. And as for me, I no longer need love. Today, I pulled my old shirt tight, meticulously buttoning it all the way to the top. At that exact moment, the doctor told me that this was what freedom meant. I closed my eyes, letting the car start up again to plunge into the infinite darkness. We drove for a very long time, so long that I almost fell asleep. When I opened my eyes again, we were parked in front of an old building. "We're here," Wei Yuru declared. I pushed the car door open and got out. It was a residential building that was as mundane as it gets: blackened walls, a security door eaten away by rust, and a hallway light bulb that kept flickering. "From this day on, this is where you live." Wei Yuru walked ahead of me to show me the way. 3rd floor, the door on the left. He pulled out his keys, opened the door, and stepped aside to let me in. The apartment wasn't big, just 1 bedroom and a living room, but it was spotless with truly simple furniture. It had all the essentials. "My clinic is right next door. If you need anything at all, call me anytime," he added. I stood in the middle of the living room, observing this unfamiliar place. "So, is this my new home?" I asked him. He looked at me. "What, you don't like it?" "No." I shook my head. "It's not that. It's just that I'm not used to it. Leaving that luxurious golden cage to suddenly find myself with a place that actually belongs to me. I didn't really know how to react." Wei Yuru headed toward the door and turned back to me. "Zhu Ting, you've accomplished everything you had to do." Matilda then said, "From now on, you are free to do whatever you want." "But what I want to do..." I froze for a moment. I had absolutely no idea. He stayed silent for a moment before letting out, "Then take your time to think about it. Either way, you've got time to burn." The door closed. Here I am standing, alone in this small room, listening to the sound of cars passing by outside from time to time and the voices of the neighbors. It's very quiet and everything is so unfamiliar to me. I walk up to the window, pull back the curtains, and look at the night scenery. The city is bathed in light with its endless flow of traffic, but none of that has anything to do with me anymore. I pull out my phone and open my notes. Observation log day 14. New environment, new identity. New beginning. 3 emotional fluctuations 0. 3. The doctor says that this is what freedom is. I stare at this line for a long moment. 3 freedom. 3. So this is what freedom is. I don't really know 3, but it's still way better than being back there. I put my phone down, lie down on the bed, my eyes glued to the ceiling. The ceiling is completely white, just like the one in the isolation cell at the reform center. But this time, I know that the door is open. I can leave whenever I want and come back whenever I feel like it. Maybe this is what freedom is. I close my eyes and suddenly an image pops into my head. A long time ago, a very long time ago, a child was brought to the Zhu family for the first time. Back then, he stood in front of the villa, looking at this majestic and glittering mansion, his heart filled with joy, thinking that he had finally found a family. He didn't know that it wasn't a home. It was a tomb. Today, that child is dead. The person who is still breathing is someone else. Someone who no longer needs a family. End of log day 14. 1 month later. Sitting in Wei Yuru's clinic, I look at the sunlight through the window. Today is my final psychological evaluation. All my indicators are very stable. Wei Yuru puts down the report and looks at me. "Congratulations, Zhu Ting, you've completed your follow-up." I nod. It doesn't make me feel anything special. This past month went by very quietly for me. Every day I get up at 6 a.m., I wash up, I fold my quilt, I hang, I towel exactly 5 centimeters from the wall, and then I go out for a walk. I do the groceries, I cook, I read, I sleep. Sometimes Wei Yuru comes to see me. He takes me to spend some time at his clinic, or we go grab a bite to eat together. He says that I am recovering very well. As for me, I reply that it doesn't feel like I am recovering from anything at all. He tells me that it's perfectly fine that way. Then he asks me about my plans for the future. I think about it for a bit. I don't really know. Then it doesn't matter if you don't know. Either way, you've got all the time in the world, he tells me. I smile slightly. It's the first time I've smiled in a month. Wei Yuru observes my expression, a strange gleam crossing his eyes, but it disappears in an instant. Zhao Ting, he suddenly calls out to me, do you hate them? No. I freeze for a second. To be honest, I don't really know. A month ago, it felt like I didn't hate them. Even today, I don't feel any hatred. But sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night and I stare at the ceiling, certain images flash back into my head. My mother hugging Zhao Ming while shooting me that look filled with disgust. My father, standing on the steps with his back turned to me, the coldness of Zhao Jinju when she signed that power of attorney, the flat calm of my second sister as she submitted her fake evidence, and that mocking gleam in Zhu Ming's eyes when he pretended to fall. All these scenes replay like a movie, again and again in my head. But the strangest thing is that when seeing all this, I feel absolutely nothing anymore. It's kind of like watching someone else's story. Yeah, I don't really know, I replied honestly. Wei Yuru nods without pressing further. He stands up, walks up to the window, and turns his back to me. Zhu Ting, have you ever thought that maybe one day you would forgive them? I looked at his back and thought about it. Maybe, but that day clearly hasn't come. Wei Yuru didn't turn around, but I saw his shoulders move slightly. Come on, he said, I'll take you back. Leaving the clinic, it was already pitch black outside. There weren't many people. In the streets, the streetlights stretched our shadows across the ground. Wei Yuru and I walked side by side. Neither of us said a word. We walked all the way to the door of my little building. He stopped. I'll leave you here, he said. I looked at him. The moonlight illuminated his face. That face usually so impassive seemed almost softened at this moment. Dr. Wei, I suddenly called out to him. Thank you. Thanks. He froze for a second. Then the corner of his lips quirked up slightly. It was the first time that he showed me such an expression, not his usual cold smile, but a truly genuine, sincere smile. You're welcome. He replied, thanks. Zhao Ting, take good care of yourself. I nodded. Thanks. He turned on his heel and walked away. I stood on the doorstep, watching his silhouette merge into the night. Then I went upstairs, unlocked the door, and went inside. The apartment was perfectly quiet. I stepped closer to the window to look at the city lights. This city was still just as bustling, but this time I no longer felt like such a stranger to it. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Zhao Ting, Mom is sick. Could you come home to see her? No. I stared at those words for a long moment. Then I put my phone back in my pocket. Without replying, I lay down on my bed, my eyes glued to the ceiling. It was still just as white, but this time, I no longer felt like I was in an isolation cell. I closed my eyes, and all those scenes came back to my head. But this time the images were slowly fading like old washed out photos, disappearing little by little into the depths of my memory. Maybe one day I'll go back there, or maybe never. But right now, I just want to get a good night's sleep. Observation log final day. All indicators are normal. Goal achieved. Independent personality established. The doctor said that this was what true freedom meant.